Pushed from a skyscraper, his life was anything but kind. But a fateful encounter granted him a second chance, as the Barbarian Attila. He awoke in a world ruled by mages, a world where he possessed not a single drop of mana. Now he was just a barbarian lost in a savage forest surrounded by monsters 5 times the size of a grizzly bear. So, he did the one thing a barbarian does best. He raised his axe and fought. 10 days later, his body had been forged into something monstrous, so strong that not even the fiercest bear could scratch him. Suddenly, a system alert echoed. The scenario's protagonist, Charles Einhard, has appeared. At this news, a man immediately issued a challenge. To Charles, it was nothing short of suicidal foolishness, but his opponent called it courage. With absolute confidence, he vowed to seize victory and walk the path of the sovereign. Just then, a system window appeared describing Charles Einhard as history's most powerful warrior. As the challenger readied his stance, another notification popped up. He was the original author, reincarnated as a nameless extra. With a roar, they charged. The clash of their swords echoed like thunder. The impact shattered the very ground beneath them. In a flash, the author leaped high into the air, preparing a deadly strike. But his downward slash was effortlessly blocked. He was forced to land, creating distance between them. Charles calmly stated he had already memorized that move. Then he raised his own blade, ready to counter. He unleashed a sword strike that sliced through the air itself. The sheer force sent his opponent flying backward. Without a moment's pause, Charles lunged, descending with his sword for another devastating attack. The violent blow slammed the author into the earth. But even then, he twisted his body and charged once more. His blade found its mark, piercing his adversary's chest. Firmly, Charles declared, "This is the end." He readied himself for the final decisive blow. The strike ran the man through, launching his body skyward. At that very instant, a pillar of immense energy shot down from the heavens. The impact triggered a massive explosion, awakening a dormant power. In the crater's center, the man stood covered in wounds. The scene shifts. A man in a suit urges Mr. Sato Shota to sign a contract. This is Sato Shota, a novelist who hit the jackpot. His free 400-chapter web novel was a miraculous success. He was the creator of the heroic saga of the Sovereign. With one signature, his masterpiece would become a game. All his hard work was about to finally pay off. He reached for the pen, ready to sign the document. A brilliant future he thought was just moments away, or so he believed, right before he suddenly found himself plummeting from the sky. A voice mused that he probably couldn't comprehend the situation, leaving Sato utterly bewildered on the ground. From the building's edge, the man from the office spoke. "Don't take it personally," he said, claiming this was for Sato's own good. Desperate, Sato begged to be saved, screaming that he was falling. The man just smirked, remarking, "What a terrible thing to say." Sato wondered if he'd really said that out loud. The man's face twisted into a grin. "I simply read your mind." In that chilling moment, the author knew the thing standing before him was not human. Instantly, the creature's foot slammed down, crushing the hand Sato had clinging desperately to the ledge. A scream tore from his throat as his fingers shattered. In pure despair, he wondered, "Is this how my life ends?" He roared that he still wanted to live longer, his eyes locking onto the figure above. In that instant, a terrifying power exploded from his very being. The force of its release shattered the concrete around him. A colossal wave of energy annihilated the entire landscape. Standing amidst the ruin, he could only ask, "What is this power?" Seeing the city in flames, he wondered if he was the cause. Floating above the creature, asked if he possessed berserker and the authority of savagery. The being's hand reached for him. As Sato hung suspended in midair, the stranger marveled at his extraordinary power. He then declared that with this strength, Sato would now begin a new life. As its face began to crack apart, it revealed the final twist. This new life would be in the world the writer himself had created. Then it let him go. "We'll meet again," it promised, as Sato plummeted downwards straight into an erupting volcano. He slammed into the ground with a violent thud. Staring at the alien landscape, he wondered if any of this was real. Moments later, a system window materialized. "Welcome to the world of the heroic saga of the Sovereign." He stared in disbelief. Was this really the world from his own novel? A rustle from the forest snapped him out of his thoughts. Panic seized him as a massive bear charged out of the woods. The beast raised a deadly paw, ready to swipe him into oblivion. He screamed that he refused to die in a place like this. At that moment, his eyes locked onto an axe lying on the ground. He snatched the weapon from the ground and charged the beast head-on. The monster roared, preparing to tear him apart. The blow landed square on its skull. With a heavy thud, the creature crashed to the earth, utterly defeated. Staring down at the bear's corpse, he wondered, what in the world is happening? Then his eyes fell upon his own body as he muttered aloud, "What the hell is this?" Just moments ago, a mysterious man had shoved him off a building. As a result, he'd been thrown into the very world of the novel he had written. And on top of that, his body had been upgraded to a clearly superhuman level. That's when he finally noticed his perfectly sculpted biceps. He then saw his broader, more powerful chest and his unbelievably shredded abdomen. He questioned the very existence of the muscles covering his body. Still, that wasn't the only thing that had changed. His 5 senses were sharper than ever before. Taking a deep breath, he sniffed the air around him. He caught the same foul, beastly stench from earlier, but this time, there was more than one. His survival instinct screamed at him to get out of there, but suddenly a piercing scream echoed from deep within the forest. As he drew closer, he stumbled upon a gruesome scene. Bodies were strewn across the forest floor. A lone woman surveyed the carnage, realizing all. Her companions were dead. 4 massive bears prowled the area, and they'd just spotted her hiding behind a tree. She accidentally stepped on a twig, and the snap echoed loudly. Instantly, one of the bears' heads whipped in her direction. Their eyes locked. With a guttural roar, the creature charged to attack. The woman braced herself, her grip tightening on her axes. Even so, she prepared for the end, whispering that she didn't want it to be like this. In that very instant, a figure appeared before her. He threw a single punch. His fist smashed into the bear's face with a sickening crunch, surprised by his own insane strength. He stared at his hand, then asked if she was all right. The woman, still in shock, asked, "Are you Attila?" Confused, he stared at the woman kneeling before him and repeated the name. Attila. She remarked that they all thought Attila was dead, but she quickly snapped out of it, warning him to look behind him. The 3 remaining bears were charging straight for him. As he turned to face them, he grimaced at the number of enemies. Desperately, she yelled, "You can't fight all of them." A slight smirk played on his lips. "Oh, really, can't I?" The beasts roared as they advanced. This only made him want to find out. That was true, so he readied himself for battle. Dashing forward, he unleashed an attack on the first creature. A heavy punch connected, and he began to count. 1. Without stopping, he launched himself toward the second beast. A powerful kick met the second animal's jaw. 2. Just like that, the first 2 bears were down for the count. He then threw a devastating punch at the last remaining bear. The third beast was sent flying into a rock as he finished. 3. Planting his feet firmly on the ground, he brandished the axe. With a single fluid motion, he delivered a precise strike. A bear's paw was severed clean from its body. The woman watched, completely stunned. He then charged forward to attack the remaining creatures. Finally, kneeling over the last bear's body, he asked, "Now who the hell is this Attila you keep talking about?" In a sudden rush of emotion, the woman ran to him and hugged him tightly. She cried out that she knew he would come back alive. The sudden embrace caught him completely by surprise. Without letting go, she urged, "Everyone in the village will be overjoyed. We must hurry back." At that moment, a system window materialized before him, displaying the profile of a character named Attila, age 16. Immediately after, Attila's memories began to flood his mind. The recollections flashed before him from the distant past, all the way to his last memory right before death. He struggled to process all the new information, and among those memories he discovered that Attila had died during a bear hunt, a rite of passage, all because of one man's conspiracy. The face of the one responsible for the betrayal appeared clearly in his mind. He realized he had been reincarnated as a nameless barbarian extra. He lamented that of all the characters, he couldn't have at least been the protagonist. The woman asked what was wrong, but he simply reassured her that he was fine. He then noticed the deep gashes on her leg. Crouching down, he told her to get on his back so they could return to the village. She warned him that the village was 20 kilometers away, but he insisted it was no problem and that he couldn't just leave her there. At last, he lifted her onto his back and began running at an incredible speed toward the village. In a lush green canyon, Attila leaped from the top of a cliff. During the high-speed descent, he casually managed to grab a fruit from a tree. Immediately after, he remarked that it tasted delicious. He offered his companion a piece, but she simply refused. They soon arrived at a valley where the Black Wolf tribe had settled. 2 members of the tribe stared in disbelief, as they were sure Attila had been killed by a bear. As all the villagers surrounded him, he carefully observed the place and thought that it was incredible. Everything around him perfectly matched the world he had designed. The landscape before him was none other than the world of the Black Wolf tribe itself. Facing the villagers, he claimed this was the greatest reward an author could ever ask for. A mountain of a man parted the crowd, his voice booming Attila's name. Before him stood his father, a living legend whispered to have slaughtered an army of 5,000 alone. Munuk, chieftain of the Black Wolf tribe, his gaze burning with intensity. He asked if his son had nothing to say to his people. With unwavering eyes, Attila declared, "I have returned." The chief surged forward, pulling him into a crushing embrace. Tears welled in Munuk's eyes as he welcomed his son home. The boy was utterly stunned by the raw emotion. Overcome, Munuk roared that he had returned from the dead. Just as the seer prophesied, he bellowed that the legend of the Black Wolf was true, and proudly admitted his heart was overflowing with joy. The chieftain announced a grand feast to honor this day, promising rivers of ale and mountains of meat until they could take no more. As night fell, the tribe gathered around a roaring bonfire, toasting to the great martial god king. Attila devoured the food, feeling like he could eat for an eternity. Just then, a warrior offered him a brimming mug, which he took without a second thought. In the background, the tribe's warriors began their ritual dance. Their movements synced to the thunderous beat of drums. The dance told the story of the great martial god king, a legend of how their hero was slain by his enemies only to rise again from the grave. A female dancer wielded an axe, her body a blur of motion.
She spun each strike executed with deadly precision. With a final dizzying whirl, the dance reached its climax, a short,
while later the performance concluded. And so the legend of the savior who protected them all was reborn. The villagers erupted in celebration once more. Watching them, Attila thought to himself, if this truly is my novel's world, there's only one way out. That single path leads to the fairy kingdom. It's the realm of the most powerful magic users, because that's exactly where I wrote the escape route. Attila took another bite of roasted meat. Just then a man approached him. I heard you took down 4 bears, he said. This was Blade, a warrior of the Black Wolf tribe. He praised Attila for the incredible feat. Then he announced that Attila was now part of the elite warrior group. For a man of the Black Wolf tribe, this was the highest honor, and also a prerequisite to becoming the next chieftain. With a sly smile, Blade invited him to a toast. But with that toast, a silent war of wills ignited between them. Attila froze the mug halfway to his lips. He'd caught a scent that screamed danger. Noticing this, Blade asked what was wrong, why he wasn't drinking. Cutting to the chase, Attila said, "Less talk. Let's just fight." Blade smirked. "It's been a while. You've learned some interesting words." But he warned him not to get cocky. "You don't even know what tricks were used to get you here." Blade's smile widened. "The night is young, and we should enjoy it to the fullest." Attila told him to wait, but the warrior merely waved goodbye and walked away with his entourage. Near the fire, a young boy proudly presented a rabbit he'd caught to Chief Munuk. The chief beamed, telling the boy he'd become a great warrior one day. This man, he was nothing like his slick younger brother Blade. Having never known a father, the main character wasn't sure how to handle this. If he'd grown up with one, he imagined he would have been praised just like that kid. Suddenly, Munuk beckoned him closer. "I have something for you." The chief then presented him with the mark of the elite warrior, a sigil granted only to those who fell 3 or more bears in one hunt. Munuk asked if he was speechless. "This is an honor any warrior would die for," he declared, urging him to put it on. Attila fumbled with the sash, realizing he'd never tied one before. Awkwardly, he just stood there, the knot a complete mess. Munuk asked what was wrong. Attila quickly lied that he'd hurt his hand and couldn't tie it properly. At this, the chief offered to do it for him. As he expertly tied the sash, he reminisced that this reminded him of the day they first met. The knot sat perfectly on his waist. Munuk stood back, remarking that Attila had grown so much and worked so hard to reach this point. The young man simply thanked him. The chief then placed a heavy hand on his head, messing up his hair. "You should look happier," he boomed, but Attila admitted he felt embarrassed. Munuk roared that there was no shame. Becoming an elite warrior at 16 was unprecedented. The other tribe members began cheering for him to celebrate. Attila couldn't help but smile at the recognition. Munuk raised his mug high, proposing a toast to the proud warriors of the Black Wolf. Every man in the tribe raised their mug in a thunderous cheer. The young man toasted with them. Maybe this life wasn't so bad after all. But suddenly a mug flew from a warrior's hand as he let out a blood-curdling scream. Attila screamed for his father in desperation. In that instant, the chieftain's form twisted into something monstrous. He wondered if it was poison. But Munuk's drink had no strange scent. "Father!" the young man cried out, but his only reply was the roar of a wild beast. Monzuk continued to rampage, completely lost to his rage. The analysis was clear. An uncontrollable fury had taken hold. The tribe's chief began slaughtering his own people. In that instant, Attila realized Bladera's target was never just Monzuk. Villagers fled, screaming in desperation. The real objective was to eliminate everyone who admired their chief. Attila's eyes blazed. To use Monzook's own hands to hurt the ones he cherished was unforgivable. Monzook charged forward like a maddened bull. The young man stood his ground, pleading, "Father, please, wake up." As he tried to restrain him, a punch of immense power sent him crashing to the ground. He realized then this was useless. His father couldn't hear him. Even so, Attila forced himself up, whispering, "This can't be real." Monzook let out a final roar as his transformation peaked. He then attacked with a devastating punch. The blow shattered the earth, sending Attila flying from the shockwave alone. He knew he couldn't stop him with his current power. As roars echoed through the chaos, a boy ran towards his mother, who had collapsed to the ground. He shook her frantically, begging her to get up. The woman told her son to save himself. Monzook stomped towards the two of them. "Run!" she screamed with all her might. Instead, the boy grabbed a fallen axe. Turning to face the monster, he declared, "I will protect my mother." The chief raised his fist to crush the child. In a flash, Attila appeared before them, blocking the deadly blow with his own arm. He praised the boy. "You have great courage." "Brother Attila!" the boy cried out. Attila yelled to the others, "Get them to safety now!" The tribesmen quickly carried the mother and son away. Attila turned back, barely catching another of Monzook's wild punches. He grimaced, just stopping him. What a naive thought. The chief lunged again with terrifying speed, the attack grazing Attila's face and tearing his ear. Monzook unleashed another brutal assault. The punch landed squarely on the young man's ribs with a sickening crunch. Attila coughed up blood. There was no more room for hesitation. Grabbing his father's arm, he knew there was only one option left. The young man steeled his resolve, deciding to fight back. Father and son faced each other, ready for a tragic showdown. Monzook charged, and Attila met him with a direct blow to the face. In response, an uppercut snapped his head back, but he retaliated instantly. A vicious hook nearly took his head off. Still, Attila pressed forward, unleashing a desperate flurry of punches. The blows hammered against Monzook's chest, but did nothing. It was like punching a mountain. This wasn't enough to take him down. Monzook prepared to strike again. A moment later, they exchanged a rapid series of blows, and Attila was sent flying. The tribe members watched the brutal scene, frozen in shock. Coughing, Attila struggled to get back on his feet. Pushing himself off the ground, he gasped for breath. A black wolf warrior is one who risks their life to protect what is precious. And that was everything Monzook had ever stood for. His father would have died to protect these villagers. With this resolve burning in his heart, he rose and activated the heroic strength skill. The young man shot toward Monzook. A thunderous headbutt struck the chief directly in the chest. The impact was so powerful, one of Monzook's fangs went flying. The chief's massive body was thrown backward by the sheer force of the attack. The tooth spun through the air and embedded itself in the ground. Completely exhausted, Attila staggered backward. Moments later, he collapsed, wondering if this was the end. Monzook remained standing as the monstrous transformation began to fade. From the ground, Attila watched in utter disbelief. Monzook stared at his own hands in confusion and asked, "What is happening?" Attila lay there, daring to hope his father had regained his senses. The system screen confirmed that Monzook had exited his rage state. Seeing this, he knew his father had truly returned. His gaze then fixed on an object glittering in the dirt before him. It was the needle that had started this nightmare. Monzook rushed to his side and asked if he was okay. Attila replied that he could hang on for now. Suddenly, the tribe's chief darted away. Bladera and his men were fleeing on horseback through the forest. The fury needle created by that witch wasn't supposed to be dislodged by a simple headbutt, but it was no match for the special power Attila possessed. Bladera whipped his horse, urging it to go faster. Before disappearing, he yelled back, "Enjoy this heroic moment, Attila, because tomorrow it will all be over." The group continued riding toward the north cave. At the entrance, Bladera ordered his men to advance. They entered the dark cavern, a single torch lighting their way. Suddenly a roar echoed from the depths, shaking them to their bones. A booming voice demanded they return what was taken. Before them, a gigantic chained beast screamed, "Return my cub!" The divine beast of the Black Wolf tribe, the calamity of the forest, roared furiously. Bladera addressed the creature by its title, but the beast just growled, "Be silent," taunting them as cowards. One of his men held a small cub hostage, threatening its life as the tiny creature trembled in his grasp. Its mother pleaded for them to stop, but Blade just ordered the beast to obliterate the Black Wolf tribe. The forest calamity let out a roar acknowledging the command. Elsewhere, Attila awoke in a bed, clutching his head, his entire body wrapped in bandages. He wondered if he had blacked out. Beside him, Munuk greeted him, making Attila turn in shock. The young man immediately asked if his father was all right. Munuk replied that his body was still paralyzed, but told him not to worry. Lying on his back, the chief confessed that he had heard everything and was deeply sorry. Attila shot back that it wasn't his fault, but the fault of that bastard Blade. Still, Munuk insisted he had failed to protect his people. He then declared that he was no longer qualified to be the tribe's chief. Attila argued back, saying that's exactly what Blade wanted to happen. But his father pleaded for him to understand, stating that the damage done was far too great. Suddenly, shouts erupted from outside the room. A crowd of villagers flooded inside. One of them yelled, "Don't push, the chief is still recovering." Another blamed someone else for even suggesting the visit. The argument devolved into who was the idiot that brought Sake to see an injured person. The woman Attila had saved stepped forward with her son, reassuring him that thanks to his efforts, everyone was safe. She declared that the chief had protected them in countless battles before. She said everyone knew how much he cherished his people and that their trust in him was absolute. With tears streaming down her face, she begged him to believe in them because they would always believe in their chief. Munuk covered his face with his hand. The tribesmen raised their fists in unison, roaring that they would protect the Black Wolf tribe together. Through his own tears, the chief could only thank them. Just then, a scout burst into the room. The man skidded to a halt, desperately yelling for them to listen. He announced that the forest calamity was attacking the village. Outside, the entire village was already engulfed in flames. Amid the inferno, the forest calamity raged uncontrollably. This beast was the legendary divine protector that once stood with the great martial king to defend the tribe. That's why the Black Wolf villagers had always referred to it with such deep reverence. Suddenly, a man rushed in, calling for everyone's attention. He then announced that the forest calamity was attacking the village. Manuk shot up in bed, bewildered, questioning what he had just heard. Attila, standing by the bed, said he would go, but his father immediately stopped him. He warned that it was suicide. A mere human was no match for a divine beast. Ignoring the warning, the young man approached a nearby axe and declared he was borrowing it. With the weapon firmly in hand, he promised to return it safely. Before leaving, he asked them all to wait for him. Outside, the creature's monstrous roar echoed through the burning village. One of the men pointed towards the beast, and Attila turned to face his foe. Seeing it, he could only comment on the creature's colossal size. Just then, Blade and his men appeared, smugly stating that he was late. He taunted Attila, asking if he really thought they'd wait for everyone to recover. The young man roared Blade's name in fury. In response, Blade simply called Attila naive, just like his father. Readying his axe, the young man challenged him to stop talking and fight. Blade praised his courage, saying it was fitting for the reincarnation of the great martial king. However, he revealed that he would not be the one fighting and raised a hand to give a command. The creature's paw slammed into the ground with devastating force. Attila barely blocked the blow with his axe as the forest calamity appeared behind Blade, awaiting its next order. Confused, the young man demanded to know how a divine beast could possibly obey his commands. Blade explained that making an enemy kneel is simple. All you have to do, he said, is take what is most precious to them, as he held up the small cub. The legendary divine beast was brought to its knees because its own cub was taken hostage. The very thing it sought to protect had become its greatest weakness. Attila asked if he was done saying his final words. Blade scoffed, questioning if those were meant to be the young man's last words instead. He then pointed, ordering the forest calamity to attack. Attila immediately braced for impact. The beast charged forward, swiping with its massive paw. He desperately parried the blow with the handle of his axe. In that single moment, he knew the situation was hopeless. A direct hit would mean being completely crushed. The beast attacked again, sending Attila flying backward from the sheer force of the blow. He managed to land on his feet, but was still dragged across the ground. The young man marveled at the speed of that massive body, a body as hard as rock and immune to any normal blade. As the creature closed in, he searched for a strategy. Then he remembered you can't cut a rock, but you can drive a wedge into it. If the blade won't cut through, then the only solution is to embed it deep inside. With that thought, he readied one axe, holding it in position. Then he used the second axe to smash into the first with every ounce of his strength. The impact drove the blade deep into the creature's body. The divine beast recoiled from the searing pain in its shoulder. Attila prepared for his next attack. The beast glared back, its eyes filled with savage intent. Attila brought his axe down hard on its paw, then he spun, gathering momentum for the next blow. He launched himself into the air for a powerful downward cleave. The axe slammed into the creature's shoulder with crushing force. The blade sank deep into its thick hide. A soldier shouted in shock he was using one axe like a hammer to drive the other one in. After a series of brutal hits to its arm, the colossal beast finally crashed to the ground. The calamity of the forest approached its cub, now lying motionless. Blah scoffed, calling it a useless bear. He then gave a chilling command to his men, "Fire your arrows." The archers drew their bowstrings taut. A deadly rain of arrows flew straight toward Attila. He braced himself for the incoming storm. His axes became a blur of motion, deflecting every single arrow. One of the men screamed in disbelief. "What is he, a monster?" That same soldier yelled for his companions to flee for their lives. But it was too late. Attila charged a whirlwind of vengeful fury. Moments later, the final opponent fell. He had single-handedly annihilated all of Bla's men with nothing but his axes. He turned his cold gaze to Bla and issued a challenge. "Now it's just you and me." Bla accepted with a smirk and beckoned him to battle. In a flash, Bla lunged forward, initiating the duel. The onlookers were confused. One of them muttered that they were just staring at each other, not even moving. But a more experienced warrior corrected him, saying the battle had likely already begun. Thus started the fight that would decide the fate of the Black Wolf tribe. Attila held his ground, his stance unshakable. Across from him, Bla waited patiently, his grip tight on his axe. Suddenly, Bla took a single step forward, and in that instant, he vanished. Attila's eyes widened, unable to track the movement. Bla reappeared directly behind him, striking like a phantom. He immediately followed up with another attack that sliced Attila's shoulder. Surprised, Attila wondered what kind of insane technique that was. As Bla charged again, he knew he was too slow to dodge. Bla taunted him, sneering. "Did you really think you could win with brute strength alone, you absolute fool?" He boasted that he was used to dealing with clumsy, power-based attacks. Attila gritted his teeth, parrying desperately and acknowledging his opponent's skill. The relentless flurry of blows forced him back step by step. He couldn't find a single opening, not even a moment to swing his axe. Bla praised him condescendingly for surviving his high-speed assault. Still, he readied his next move. With another burst of speed, he rushed forward again. Attila's instincts screamed as he reacted to the sudden blur. At that moment, Bla declared his victory. Leaping over him, he landed another precise, calculated strike. In technique and experience, Bla was clearly his superior. Even so, Attila was already searching for a chance to counter. He remembered that this pain was nothing compared to Mook's brutal training. Suddenly, he saw it the perfect opening and decided to strike with precision. He slammed the handle of his axe into Bla's side. The blow landed squarely, making him spit up a mouthful of blood. Some of the men erupted in cheers, shouting that Attila had won. He stood tall, the apparent victor of the duel. But then, lying on the ground, Bla began to laugh. Attila narrowed his eyes and asked what could possibly be so funny. Between cackles, Bla said it was about time for the effect to kick in, confusing him. Then he revealed the horrifying truth: his axe was coated in berserker poison. He then asked if Attila knew what happens when someone is cut by that weapon. Furious, Attila spat out the word, "bastard." Bla pointed a trembling finger and declared that Attila himself would be the one to destroy the Black Wolf tribe. The young man looked at his own hand, confused by what was happening. He felt a strange, corrupting power surging through his veins. A scream tore from his throat as a dark energy exploded from his body. Bla shrieked with glee for him to turn into a mindless beast and die a miserable death. Attila felt his entire body burning up from the inside. Confused, he questioned what was happening to him. In that instant, the divine beast knelt before him, and a voice echoed in his mind. Attila, the one who inherits the soul of greed. Surprised, he asked if the divine beast could speak. It explained that he could now hear its voice because he was closer to being a beast than a human. The creature then opened its maw and told him to receive its gift. Attila watched mesmerized as a dagger materialized in his hand. The divine beast explained that this was the divine sword of the great marshal, king granted to the one who defeats it, and its name was Mew. It stated the weapon would guide his awakening when his soul resonated with the Black Wolf tribe, urging him to keep fighting. Finally, it commanded him to fight for those he must protect. An information window then appeared describing the properties of the legendary weapon Mew. The smoke around Attila slowly cleared as he faced Bla once more. The men watched, unable to comprehend what they were seeing. Bla wondered why his opponent was standing so still. In response, Attila simply said his name in a cold, low voice. Then he declared, "It's time to settle this." In less than the blink of an eye, Attila lunged forward and vanished from sight. Before Bla could even react, a thin red line appeared across his cheek. After the strike, Attila landed softly on the ground. Then Bla was struck again from behind, screaming that it was impossible. The divine dagger was now lodged deep in his chest. His shoulder. He stares in disbelief at the blade piercing his own flesh. Recognizing the weapon, he whispers, "Is that the mule?" Before he can even process it, Attila unleashes the final blow. The devastating impact sends Bleta flying backward. He crashes face first into the dirt, his lifeblood pooling around him. In that moment, the horrifying truth dawns. Attila was chosen by the divine beast. The world had never been fair to him. His curse was to be born the brother of a genius. He spent his entire life living in Munuk's shadow, constantly being compared. Yet he desperately chased after the back of the brother he once revered. He tried to master the very madness that made him cough up blood. But during one fateful battle, everything changed forever. Munuk, the greatest warrior of the Black Wolves, was a whirlwind of destruction, cutting down enemies without end. Bleda would scream at him for charging in alone, but his brother would just sheepishly apologize for getting too carried away. He'd complain again after seeing him face the entire enemy army by himself. And yet Munuk always fought at the very center of the storm. Suddenly, Bleta spots a new threat emerging from the shadows. Panic seized him as he ran shouting his brother's name. An enemy blade swung from Munuk's unguarded back. Bleta took the blow to his face, his brother's horrified scream echoing in his ears. Wounded while protecting the tribe's hero, he collapsed to his knees and demanded answers. Bleta confronted him. After everything I've given, why can't I fight in the next battle? But Munuk only offered a hollow apology. He explained that with his damaged eyes, Bleta's time on the battlefield was over. Instead of glory, he was cast aside. A messenger announced a new invasion, and Munuk prepared for war. It was then Bleta realized he was the only one who thought they were fighting together.
He roared in anguish. You could never understand my suffering. I am not the villain here.
In his broken heart, the true culprits were Munuk, who abandoned him, and the Black Wolf tribe that forgot his sacrifice. Fueled by this burning hatred, he rose to his feet, vowing to destroy everything. He charged, screaming, "Get out of my way!" Attila stood before him, his voice as cold as steel. "Stop spouting such pathetic nonsense." Then he demanded, "Answer for your own sins." Taking a step forward, Attila's resolve hardened into diamond. "I won't let a man like you get away with this."
You will never hurt my family or my comrades again. With that, he launched himself forward, roaring, I won't let you hurt anyone.
Their gazes locked two forces of nature on a collision course. Steel screamed as they clashed in a mid-air explosion. Attila delivered the final blow, striking him down with righteous fury. In that last instant, a painful truth became clear. Deep down, everything his brother did had been a twisted form of kindness. Still, his only wish was to hear his brother say, "Let's fight together." Bleda remembered the days they fought as one side by side. The warriors watching knew the battle was finally over. With Bleda's death, a fragile peace returned to the village.
Afterwards, Attila made his decision. He had to reach the fairy realm. I'm leaving now, he announced, his voice firm. One of the men questioned his choice, while another lamented, if he became our chief, we would be safe forever.
Munuk, however, silenced them all. Unfortunately, Attila cannot take that position. The villagers erupted, shouting that it wasn't true.
He would do an excellent job, they cried. Munuk simply said, then I will show you why. Confused, the tribe watched as he raised his axe.
Without warning, Munuk unleashed a vicious strike. Caught completely off guard, Attila reacted on pure instinct. He barely managed to block his own father's attack. "Father," he yelled, "what is the meaning of this?" "A splendid defense," Munuk praised him. "However, your stance is weak and riddled with openings." Attila stood in stunned silence, unable to comprehend the situation. Munuk continued, "You clearly possess a special power." He then declared, "The sword entrusted to you is proof that a great destiny awaits."
Munuk explained that a person's soul is tested in the fires of despair, and that Bleda had lost the light within his own soul. So you must temper your mind, your technique, your body, and your soul like steel forged 100 times over. Finally, he commanded, no matter what happens, you must never lose the light of your soul. Attila called out to his father, understanding in his voice. "I will."
Munuk then asked his son to return at once. But at that moment, a woman named Araku appeared in his path. She approached him softly. "This is a promise." Suddenly, she placed something cool around his neck, surprising him. Araku pulled him into an embrace as she fastened the amulet. It was carved from the fang of the divine beast itself. "This will surely protect you," she whispered. Attila, deeply moved, simply said, "Thank you." Munuk then rushed to him, holding him tight, pleading, "Please, don't go."
But he was already walking away. From a distance, Attila bid a final farewell to his people who watched from the village gate.
Later, he made camp alone in the deep, dark forest. Sitting by the fire, he remarked to himself, "This meat is roasting nicely." He picked up the sizzling piece. "Looks delicious," he thought. He was about to take the first glorious bite when a sound from the forest made him freeze. He snapped his head toward the darkness, into the deepening shadows of the forest. Attila's voice cut through the silence. "How long are you going to keep tailing me?" Just then, the tiny divine beast cub emerged from the darkness. Attila glared into the gloom, repeating his question. Timidly, the cub peeked out from behind a massive tree. With a calm sigh, he simply told the creature, "Go home." But the cub just sat on the ground, watching him with wide, innocent eyes. Attila tried to explain that he couldn't take it with him. "Be a good boy and go back to your nest," he urged. But right on cue, the little beast's stomach let out a mighty roar, its gaze locked on the meat in his hand. Seeing this, Attila's resolve crumbled. He offered the food, saying, "Eat this, and then go." The cub latched onto the meat and refused to let go, getting flung around like a rag doll. A short while later, the little creature was fast asleep, clutching the stolen prize. Attila realized the cub had taken his entire meal. He muttered, You're a savage despite that cute face, and decided to leave it there. But as he turned to walk away, he froze. He spotted something bizarre. What in the world is that? The cub suddenly spat out an object, making Attila jump back in shock. Don't scare me like that, he yelled as the creature offered him a twig. Confused, Attila stared. Is this a gift? I don't need it, he roared. But the cub just snuggled into his lap, leaving him to wonder why it was so attached. Then it hit him. Could it smell its mother on him? This was the same cub Blada had taken hostage, the one its mother, the divine beast, had given her life to protect. That was precisely why Attila couldn't take it on this perilous journey. He stared down at the cub sleeping peacefully, realizing this was a massive headache. Suddenly, the little creature shifted, laying down right beside his sword. In that instant, he remembered. This cub was also a guardian beast, bound to protect that very weapon. As the sun rose heralding a new day, the cub awoke and looked around. It realized Attila was gone. Panic set in, and it bolted in the direction he'd taken. After just a few steps, it stopped, looking completely lost. Soon, the tiny cub began to cry. Just then, Attila appeared holding the sword. Is this what you were looking for? He explained that he couldn't give it back, but instead he tore off a piece of his own bandage. He carefully tied the strip of cloth around the cub's neck. This is my gift to you, Attila said softly. Then he turned, calling, out. Let's go. Before he left, he warned, fall behind and I'm leaving you. The cub immediately ran and rubbed against his leg, then began to happily follow him down the road. Attila warned, our next meal isn't until the next village, so you better run. And so the two began their journey along a winding mountain path. Far away, a woman observed them through a crystal orb, remarking that this was quite an interesting sight. She described him as a wild, resilient warrior, one capable of shattering a magical poison needle, the witch. Botry Elizabeth mused, where has such an exceptional man been hiding? Finally, she smirked. He has certainly piqued my interest. We're here, Attila announced. Before him stood the first city of their journey. They found a tavern where the little beast immediately began to feast. Attila, perched on a stool, warned it with a concerned tone, don't eat that. At that moment, the tavern owner brought out a massive platter, apologizing for the wait. A huge serving of steamed buns was set on the table. Attila grabbed one and took a bite, asking the man if he knew anything about the fairy kingdom. The keeper replied he'd never heard of it. Just as I thought. Attila sighed. The fairy sanctuary was a floating island lost in the North Sea of the Kuriel Shrudra continent. He took a drink, lamenting that it was something he'd only written about in his novel. I really should have added more detail, he grumbled. The owner was amazed he'd finished his food so quickly. Attila knew that to even reach the North Sea, he would first have to cross a very specific land, a place swarming with monsters like giants and dragons, and even beyond, that he'd have to face the sinister creatures that lurked in the dark regions. Thinking about it all, he clutched his head as a sharp pain shot through it. From another table, a man loudly repeated his question about the fairy kingdom. He and his buddies burst into laughter, one of them asking how old Attila was. Another man shot to his feet
and bellowed, there's no such thing as a fairy kingdom. In a mocking voice, he told Attila to quit daydreaming and face
the real world. Attila coldly shot back, this has nothing to do with you. He stood up, ordering the man to get lost, at once. The drunkard snarled a threat, you don't move, and this little furball becomes tonight's stew. In response, the cub bit down hard on his finger. Attila sighed. Don't mind them, they're just a bunch of drunks. Suddenly, another man kicked the table, sending the drunk flying across the room. Attila and the tavern keeper whipped their heads toward the newcomer. Otto, leader of the Kiri mercenary group, remarked coolly, the booze loses its taste when trash like you is around. The tavern keeper is frozen with fear at the man's presence, warning Attila to get out of there as fast as he can. Confused, Attila wonders what the knight's problem is, but the innkeeper reveals his identity. Otto, the ogre blade. A small smile plays on Attila's lips. A fallen knight turned outlaw, huh? Otto just scoffs, saying he doesn't owe anyone an explanation. Just then, the drunkard's friends charge forward, rushing to attack Attila. His eyes narrow, locking onto his approaching targets. In less than a blink, every single one of them is sent flying to the ground. Otto stares, his jaw hanging open at the impossible sight. Seeing his men utterly defeated, he demands to know who Attila is. With a smirk, Attila simply says, he's the original author. He then rips his shirt open. Now, it's your turn. Otto's face drains of color as he begs him to wait a second. The thugs drop to their knees on the floor and immediately begin to apologize. Attila takes a step back, casually stating it was just self-defense.
He tries to justify his actions, saying they attacked him first, so he had no choice. At that moment, the tavern keeper grabs his hands, thanking him profusely.
Ignoring the commotion, Attila spots a wanted poster on the wall and asks if those men were criminals. The tavern keeper confirms it, explaining that the local lord issued a warrant for them. The whole town had been suffering because of their actions.
Attila wonders why the order specified they be captured alive. The man speculates that perhaps the lord planned to recruit them for the war.
He says he's heard whispers of a looming conflict and that the local army has far fewer soldiers than their rivals. Because of that, Lord Bertrand is gathering anyone he can as a military force, even if they're criminals. Hearing this, a knowing smile spreads across Attila's face. This was perfect news. A short while later, they arrive at the local lord's mansion.
Inside the grand hall, a man asks if Attila is the one who captured the bandits to claim the reward.
The nobleman receiving them introduces himself as Lord Bertrand. Kneeling respectfully, the young man confirms it. He adds that he's come to collect the cash reward for the group's capture. Lord Bertrand scolds him, questioning his talk of war breaking out in Gasconu. Attila, however, remains completely calm, replying that he is simply preparing for what's to come. The lord's tone sharpens, demanding to know where he heard such things. Attila reveals the rumors about the severe lack of soldiers. He pieces it all together for him. They're all being conscripted for a war against the Akites in the east.
He then points out that this is precisely why there are no guards or watch corps in the village.
The nobleman is struck speechless by the sharp deduction. Attila continues, saying the lord wanted them captured alive to use as soldiers on the battlefield.
Bertrand has to praise his incredible insight. Attila returns the compliment, claiming that among the barbarians, the name Hound of the Southern Mountain is a terrifying legend.
A name that causes both fear and tears. Visibly flattered, Lord Bertrand proudly remarks that even the barbarians know of his fame. At that moment, Attila admits that it was a complete lie, but adds that it would be an honor to serve such a great man and receive a reward. Bertrand thinks for a moment and agrees that capturing the entire Kiri mercenary group certainly deserves recognition. So he offers 10 gold coins and a warrior of Attila's choice receiving immediate thanks.
However, the nobleman adds that there is one condition. Extending his hand, he declares that if Attila truly wishes to serve him, he must join the war.
He must fight alongside Gasconu's army. Otto and his men are shocked by the sudden proposal. Attila, on the other hand, accepts without a moment's hesitation, stating those were the exact words he was waiting to hear.
His decision to join the war was made for a single critical reason. It was necessary to force that man into action.
That man was Charles Einhard. He was the protagonist of this story, known among his enemies as the God of Death.
And he was the only one who knew the path to the Fairy King. In the fortress courtyard, war preparations were proceeding at a furious pace.
From behind bars, Otto speaks with Attila while the other prisoners watch them in silence. Suddenly, he screams in pure desperation, begging Attila to get them out of this mess. Attila calmly replies that he's being too loud and tells him to stop calling him boss, since he's only 16 years old.
The revelation of his age leaves Otto utterly baffled as he asks if he isn't actually 46.
A cold glare from Attila makes him apologize instantly. Otto argues that if they don't join the battle, they'll all be executed for sure. Attila, however, calmly claims that won't happen. He tells them to just join the fight quietly, and they will all be saved.
The mercenary leader falls silent for a moment, staring through the bars. Then he proposes they settle everything in a one-on-one duel.
Attila is intrigued by the proposal of single combat. A joust, a formal duel. It's a sacred confrontation between two knights with everything on the line. The rules might change, but one truth is always the same. The strongest warrior wins regardless of their status.
The winner takes all the glory while the loser is left with nothing but shame. Otto reveals that he was once a knight and that he can't win in a brawl.
But on horseback, armed with a lance, he'd have a fighting chance. And in the original story, he was indeed a knight.
Originally, this man was a minor character, fated to die unnamed by Duke Gascon's army.
But Attila's arrival in this world is rewriting destiny, and Otto's death now would be a major problem. So to drag the Kiri mercenary group into the war, Attila decides to accept the daring proposal. He declares the terms: if he wins, they all join the war. If Otto wins, he'll grant them freedom as promised. With a calm smile, Attila accepts the duel. The mercenaries roar, placing their very lives in their captain's hands. Otto's face is grim and serious, while Attila remains the picture of calm. 10 days later, the day of the joust arrives, and the two knights take their positions. A herald's voice booms across the arena, welcoming the lords, ladies, and honored guests. The crowd roars back electric with anticipation. Lord Bertrand watches every detail intently from his seat. The herald announces that this battle is for the highest of stakes and asks for a thunderous applause.
He then declares that everyone knows the rules as the knights lower their lances ready for battle.
They must charge with absolute fury. The two warriors face each other from opposite ends of the field.
The only rule is to attack with the lance. The one who unhorses his opponent will be declared the victor. For proud knights like these, social status is meaningless. This is a fight where only the strong win and take all. The herald turns to the roaring crowd. Then he announces that the duel is about to begin. With a solemn gesture, he signals for the combatants to enter. Otto, the infamous demon sword, thunders into the arena on his warhorse. A few men in the crowd immediately scream for his death. A woman seated nearby remarks that he seems quite hated. One of the men turns to retort, but he freezes. The hooded woman simply raises a finger to her lips, silencing him with a glance. The witch Bay Arette smirks, saying she doesn't care, as she only came to see little Attila's performance. The men who were just screaming are now utterly enchanted by her. Next, the herald announces the challenger from the west. He introduces Attila, the barbarian warrior of unknown strength, who single-handedly captured the entire Kiri mercenary group. The imprisoned mercenaries erupt, shouting for their captain to win, as their very lives depend on this fight.
Otto hears their cheers and becomes visibly flustered. From across the arena, Attila simply calls out his name.
He then remarks that the armor doesn't look half bad on him. Otto just scoffs, telling him to enjoy his arrogance while it lasts. The herald announces that the long-awaited moment has finally arrived. Attila of the Black Wolf tribe against Otto, the demon sword. Finally, the herald begins the duel. He thanks the audience for their patience. He then presents the ultimate showdown between Otto the demon sword and the barbarian warrior Attila. With the swift wave of a flag, the match begins. Otto charges forward, his lance poised for a killing blow.
At the same moment, Attila gallops toward his opponent. With eyes fixed on his target, Otto is certain of his victory.
A moment later, he thrusts his lance forward, but Attila simply leans off his horse, watching the tip whistle dangerously close to his face.
Otto is in complete shock at his opponent's impossible maneuver. The mercenaries gasp, wondering if he actually caught the lance with his bare hands.
Calmly, Attila says he's just going to return the favor. A system window flashes Lance Mastery skill activated. He then spins the weapon with incredible speed and thrusts it back toward Otto. Otto watches the tip of the lance race toward him, then Attila strikes him with the butt end of the weapon. The impact sends a spray of blood from Otto's mouth. He doubles over on his horse from the sheer force of the blow. Bay Arette smiles as she watches the duel unfold. She remarks that he's truly an insane warrior, a real berserker.
Attila breaks the lance over his knee, and the herald declares that the warrior from the Black Wolf tribe has won the first round.
Soon after they prepare for the second round, now Otto wields a massive warhammer, knowing the situation is not in his favor. The herald announces the start of the second round. Attila charges forward, thundering across the arena. He decides he'll end it all by knocking his opponent from his horse. With this goal, he accelerates at blinding speed toward Otto. His opponent also rides into the deadly confrontation. The mercenaries scream their captain's name. The warhammer is thrown spinning through the air like a deadly vortex. Otto watches the weapon draw near. At that exact moment, Bay Arette snaps her fingers. She smiles, raising her index finger playfully. Suddenly, a powerful force erupts from the arena floor. Attila and Otto are both caught by surprise by the magical disturbance. Attila's horse rears up violently. Startled, he turns and glares toward the stands, searching for the source of the interference. Then his gaze locks onto Bay Arette. She just stares back at him without saying a single word. The mercenaries and the small creature shout that the horse is out of control. Otto believes he's been saved and sees his golden opportunity. Attila tosses aside the broken lance. Otto realizes his attack missed, but the fight wasn't over. In that instant, an insane idea sparked in Attila's mind. He launched himself from his own saddle, soaring towards his rival. Otto was completely blindsided by this insane tactic. Attila landed perfectly on the enemy steed right behind him. In the next second, he had Otto in a chokehold.
The herald cried out in shock. He just leaped onto his opponent's horse. "Is that even allowed in a joust?" he stammered.
Lord Bertrand, however, simply watched with a knowing smirk. Attila grunted, "Round 2 is mine." The panicked horse bolted across the arena out of control. With both men on its back, it reared up violently. Tired of this rodeo, Attila kept his grip tight on Otto. With a sudden powerful buck, the horse sent them both flying. He landed gracefully on his feet. Otto, however, crashed hard into the dirt. His men screamed in terror, seeing the grave danger. Attila's own warhorse was now charging wildly, straight for the downed Otto. Bay watched the chaos unfold, her eyes fixed on the scene. Meanwhile, Attila had already moved to stand over his rival. With a single command, he ordered his steed to halt. Otto's horse, terrified by his presence, bolted in the opposite direction. The entire audience was breathless, watching in stunned silence. From afar, Beery Elizabeth observed every detail. Attila plunged his greatsword into the earth beside the wreckage of his foe's weapon. Otto, the infamous demon sword, could only kneel before him. Then Attila offered his hand. "Round 3, he asked simply. Otto stared at the gesture, processing the moment. He took the hand and rose to his feet. "Let's finish this." The herald finally found his voice, announcing the final decisive round.
Between the two legendary knights, Beery Elizabeth chuckled to herself.
"So he noticed my little trick. How amusing." Addressing the packed arena, the herald thanked the crowd for their patience. During that minor incident, he announced the fight would now continue on foot. With the warriors in place, he declared, there are no rules. Any weapon is permitted. With a wave of his hand, the final battle was unleashed. Attila exploded forward, launching the first attack. Otto barely dodged the assault. He countered with a powerful strike of his own. He could feel it instantly. His opponent's attacks were unnaturally heavy. Every swing carried devastating force. I just need to evade that first strike, he thought, steeling himself. Attila then soared into the air for a final decisive blow. Otto dodged just in time, the massive sword slamming into the ground. My chance, he yelled. Victory is mine. Naive, Attila scoffed, using the momentum to spin his entire body. The flat of the blade smashed into Otto's face. The brutal impact sent him flying like a broken doll. In that moment, he realized this man wasn't human. Attila advanced slowly on the fallen Otto. From the crowd, his men screamed for their captain, but they were quickly silenced. Then new voices began to echo across the arena. They were begging for the fight to be stopped. Otto struggled to his feet, drenched in blood, his sword shattered. One of his men cried out, "Stop! It's enough!" Another pleaded, "I'll do anything, just spare his life." "We'll even join your war," he promised. "The captain can't die in a place like this." Otto turned to his men. "Even tied up, you guys still run your mouths too much. But," he admitted, "I'd do the same for any of you." The broken sword fell from his grip, clattering on the ground. The herald of the joust made the official call. Otto can no longer continue. Raising a white flag, he declared Attila the victor. His consciousness fading, Otto collapsed forward. But Attila caught him before he could hit the dirt. He spoke softly, "You're no longer just a nameless sword. You are a warrior worthy of my respect." The stadium erupted into a deafening roar. Lord Bertrand watched intently, flanked by his guards. And from a distance, Bay observed it all with a faint smile. The little white creature scurried across the arena floor. As the sun began to set, the mercenaries hoisted Attila onto their shoulders in victory. That very night, the official word came down. At Attila's request, the mercenaries had joined Lord Bertrand's army. Inside a rowdy tavern, mugs were raised high. They toasted to a new beginning for the Kiri Mercenary Corps.
Otto bellowed, "Tonight everything's on the boss, so eat up and be grateful, you lugs."
"More food over here," a man shouted, and the innkeeper happily obliged. Attila, petting the small creature, noted, "Everyone seems to have recovered quickly." Otto declared that a true warrior accepts defeat with honor, but then he complained. He was forbidden from drinking. "I haven't had a single drop since I got out of that cell," he whined. His own men had to hold him back as he lunged for a mug. 2 weeks later, Attila, enjoying a skewer, noticed Otto's wounds had healed nicely. The innkeeper came over to greet him. "Heard you're all heading to the war. I'm sure you'll accomplish great things."
"Where did you hear that?" Attila asked. "Oh, one of your men mentioned it," he replied. "By the way, we're running low on ale." Attila then gave him an order.
"Don't move." The tavern keeper froze confused as Attila rose from his seat. "You," he declared, "are not the owner of this place." The man's eye twitched. "What are you talking about?" Attila's gaze was sharp. "You have no scent, like a hollow doll." He leaned in. "Odd for someone who's been cooking for an entire tavern. So tell me," Attila demanded, "what are you—" In that instant, the keeper's body began to twist and warp. Otto rushed to his side. "Attila, who is that?" A chilling voice echoed. "To see through my disguise, you must be skilled," the masked figure chuckled. "But knowing who I am won't save you," the man brandished his weapon. "Because your journey ends here." He lunged, but Attila dodged like a phantom. The blade shattered the chandelier, plunging the room into absolute darkness. But Attila's senses remained on high alert.
"It's pitch black," Otto cried out. "Calm down," Attila commanded. But Otto was frantic. "How can I be calm when there's an assassin lurking in the shadows?" Just then, a figure appeared right behind him, blade raised to strike. In a flash, Attila yanked him out of harm's way. He pushed his companion back. "Stay in the corner and be quiet."
He then faced the darkness. "An assassin who specializes in illusions." Attila's voice was cold. "From your build and power, I know you. You're Rashid, the second-rate killer," the masked man simply stared back, shifting into a fighting stance. After a tense silence, Attila smirked. "Am I wrong?" Rashid vanished, but Attila was faster. He appeared behind him, a blade already at his throat. "Tell me everything," he whispered, "and I'll grant you a swift end." He pressed the blade harder. "Lie, and I will peel the skin from your bones." Rashid scoffed. "Can you really do that with just the hilt of your sword?" The assassin made his move, but suddenly froze in his tracks. A projectile whizzed through the air. Attila sidestepped. The blade struck the assassin's face, splitting his mask in two. As the broken pieces clattered to the floor, Rashid staggered back. His face now exposed, he demanded, "How?" How did you read my movements in the dark?
Attila answered calmly. The smell of hashish. Rashid repeated the word, his voice trembling with disbelief. Attila explained.
A faint scent clings to your hidden weapons. It's more than enough. The assassin's eyes widened. You predicted everything. Just by a smell. His will shattered. He fell to his knees. I admit defeat. Rashid then prepared to take his own life with his blade. But before he could, a firm hand stopped his wrist. It was Attila. Tell me about Kassab. Rashid's blood ran cold. How do you know my son's name? Attila's expression was unreadable. I have my reasons. The narration explains that Kassab is Rashid's precious son, a boy who would one day become a key ally to Charles. Desperate, Rashid begged, please don't harm my child. I will do anything you ask. Attila looked down at him. There is one condition. The assassin looked up, hopeful. What is it? Attila's command was simple. Become my dog, he added. Don't worry, just do as you're told. Without a moment's hesitation, the assassin bowed his head. A warrior's contract is absolute. I will contact you later, Attila said. Then Rashid began to bark. Attila sighed. Stop. I didn't mean it. So literally. Otto and his men could only stare, completely baffled by the bizarre scene. From a safe distance, Elizabeth Botry watched, raising a curious eyebrow. What in the world are they doing? Is this some strange ritual for an unknown god? She shrugged, a smirk on her face, intrigued by what her new allies would do next. And so the spring came to Nbaumkis, and the days that followed were filled with grueling training. Then, on a hot summer day on the continent's southern plains, cavalry advanced. A city burned in the distance, ravaged by a brutal attack. The Great War had begun. The arrival of knights in shining armor was announced. They were the Golden Lion mercenary group, led by the legendary Charles Einhard. A legion of lancers marched in perfect, deadly formation. War banners blotted out the sun. The cavalry charged, shaking the very earth.
A commander roared, wipe out every last Gasconian coward, immediately after another officer screamed,
show them the might of Aquitania, kill them all. His order was cut short as his head went flying. His men screamed his name in pure terror. In that moment of chaos, a massive axe flew toward them. The weapon slammed into the ground as a lone rider charged from the dust. The soldiers panicked. Is that the entire Gasconian army? But one of them squinted. No, wait, it's just one man. Atop his steed, Attila was fighting a losing battle. Whoa, stop you stupid horse, rein it in. But the stubborn animal plowed straight into the enemy lines, sending soldiers scattering like pins. Amid the chaos, he swung his weapon instinctively. Well, this wasn't the plan, Attila muttered, but I guess there's no choice now. He cut down an enemy knight, sighing. I really didn't want to draw so much attention. Drawing all the attention, a soldier screams, he's a demon, not a man. Seeing this, the commander gives the only order left a full retreat. The soldiers desperately flee on horseback, but Attila has no intention of letting a single one escape. He snatches a volley of spears from the blood-soaked earth. With a mighty heave, he prepares to unleash hell. The skill spear throw activates. The deadly weapons soar toward the fleeing cowards. A horse is struck down first. Moments later, its rider is pierced clean through. Man and beast collapse in a brutal symphony of death. Attila charges forward on his steed, roaring, "Attack!" His men surge behind him, begging him not to get too far ahead. That's when Otto realizes the real battle has just begun. His enemies instantly recognize him. Otto, the ogre blade of the Kiri mercenaries. And if he's here, then the executioner Attila can't be far behind. Under Attila's command, the Kiri mercenaries move like a single deadly shadow. Every member knows their role. They brace themselves for the fight to come. Meanwhile, at the Grand Cathedral, an investiture ceremony is in full swing. Count Aku de Aule formally receives his title, and Charles Einhard is officially knighted. His sacred duty to protect the people and act as their shield. The noble ladies in attendance whisper about his handsome looks. They murmur with admiration that he's only 18 years old. But two other nobles can't stomach the sight of a mere commoner becoming a knight. They start sneering about his lowly origins. One suggests Charles is nothing but a sacrificial lamb, a meat shield meant to die for the true lords. Just then a hand claps down on the noble's shoulder. A mountain of a man leans, in his voice a low rumble. Speaking ill of others is a fool's game. Ruach, captain of the special attack unit, adds,
And speaking ill of Charles is far worse.
Enraged, the noble sputters, demanding to know who dares touch him. He puffs out his chest, declaring he is a baron.
Another man swiftly intervenes, bowing his head. My deepest apologies, Baron Ruach, for my companion's foolish words. He introduces himself as Pippin, vice-captain of the Golden Lion mercenaries. But the Baron doesn't even glance his way. And how would you know my name? Pippin replies calmly. Everyone attending this ceremony has already been identified.
The noble scoffs in disbelief. Did you really memorize all 800 guests? It must be a bluff. Just like you low-born scum.
Pippin simply apologizes for the disturbance and turns to go, but the Baron blocks his path. Do you think a commoner can insult a noble and just walk away? With all due respect, Pippin explains that Ruach merely offered a warning about insulting Sir Charles. He continues, insulting a knight without just cause is a crime. Therefore, it is you, my lord, who will not go unpunished.
The noble just calls him an annoyance and waves him off. Pippin excuses himself once more and finally departs. Later that night, he pauses during a walk through the woods. An insect lands on his arm. He muses on the creature's blinding speed. That's when Charles asks him, "What's on your mind?"
Pippin replies, "The ceremony is over. Tomorrow we ride into battle." Charles scoffs, "Let those useless fools run their mouths."
His voice rings with conviction. "I will conquer this entire nation. I won't let anyone look down on me or my comrades ever again." Pippin grins. "That's a promise, then?" Charles meets his gaze, sealing their oath with a fist bump.
Then Pippin grows serious. He's received intel about an impossibly strong mercenary in Gasconu. He explains the reports say this man's power rivals even that of Charles Einhard. Charles's eyes light up. Is he really that strong? A confident smirk spreads across his face. "Then I can't wait to meet him on the battlefield."
Otto asks Attila if he can see the dungeon in the sky. The young barbarian just looks confused by the question. So Otto clarifies, amazed by how perfectly Attila grasped the enemy's camp and numbers. But Attila simply denies having any such power.
As his men celebrate their victory, Otto declares it's a sign that the heavens themselves are on their side.
But Attila scoffs internally at the faith of a former bandit.
When Otto calls him a former knight, he corrects him. "I never held a noble title, and it's obvious the heavens are not on our side."
He explains he simply understands the flow of battle. He must act without changing the original story so that Charles can find the fairy realm unharmed. Suddenly, the entire sky begins to darken. Otto stares, stunned by the unnatural change. Attila looks up, wondering if this is some kind of omen. A massive eclipse begins to swallow the sun. He watches the phenomenon, a chill running down his spine. "I don't remember writing a scene like this in the original." Rashid kneels before him with a report. "The Golden Lion mercenaries will divide their forces into 2 groups. They will make their move within 5 days. Attila realizes it's begun. Charles is finally making his move. "I understand. Continue your excellent work," he tells Rashid. The Gasconian army should have already joined this war, but Blato was defeated. Because of that single failure, Gasconu's entire military strength has collapsed. If things continue on this path, the war will be over long before Charles has a chance to discover the fairy realm. "Otto," Attila calls out. His subordinate quickly asks what he needs. Unwilling to let fate stray from its course, model. He couldn't let the legacy he was building be twisted any further. His voice rang out, "We're attacking the Golden Lion mercenary group." Otto blinked, needing a moment. "Excuse me. Did I hear that target correctly?" Attila's gaze was ice. "You did."
The mercenary warned, "Rumor has it they've got over 100 men." The young barbarian simply replied, "I know."
Otto grabbed his arm, his voice urgent. "Their leader Charles is a monster. He's just as strong as you are." Attila just looked at him unfazed. "So are you coming or not?" Otto grit his teeth. "I'm in." "Then get ready." He argued back, "But preparations will take at least 10 days. We need armor, food, weapons." He also insisted their men still needed more training, but Attila cut him off. "We leave immediately." Confused, Otto pressed, "What exactly does immediately mean?" A faint smile touched Attila's lips. "It means the 3 former knights, you and I, are leaving right now." 5 days later, the southern front was a hellscape of fire and steel. Pippin and his soldiers stared in shock at the absolute carnage. He muttered, "We had no reports about this." A man screamed, "It's the Black Wolf tribe, they're reinforcing Gasconu." As they advanced over the fallen knights, Pippin rallied his remaining soldiers to face the oncoming warriors. One of the barbarians charged forward, his blade cleaving a knight in 2.
The same warrior lunged again, felling another soldier. When the bloody confrontation ended, Pippin and his men were all on the ground.
Later, inside the Golden Lion's command tent, Charles addressed his men. "The Black Wolf tribe appeared on the southern front today."
One knight questioned, "That warrior tribe has really sided with Gasconu?"
Charles confirmed. "They have, and they are expanding their influence with terrifying speed." Still, Charles only saw this as a golden opportunity to earn his glory. He then announced, "The first unit's objective has changed. We mobilize for the front line immediately." His men, including Pippin and Ruach, responded without hesitation. Pippin reported, "First unit is ready to depart." Charles thanked him. "The second unit is in your hands." He then turned to his men and roared, "First unit advance!" Before leaving, he looked at Pippin. Don't you die on me." His friend just smirked. "Don't say things that won't happen." Ruach approached, adding, "Worrying about Pippin is a waste of time." Charles then ordered, "You make sure you protect yourself too." Ruach smiled. "I'm counting on my leader for that." With fierce determination, Charles declared, "We will make our name and rise in this country." His men, including Pippin and Ruach, roared in absolute support. 4 figures marched off into the darkness. Pippin turned to his own soldiers. "Let's go hunt some enemy commanders." But as they prepared to move out, he spotted a sudden movement in the shadows. Attila exploded from the forest, leaping toward 2 knights. Brandishing his weapon, he yelled, "I've finally found you!" Pippin moved in a flash, intercepting Attila's devastating blow. The scene rewinds to 5 days ago, during the eclipse. Otto had questioned, "Is it really possible to attack the Golden Lions with just 5 of us?" Attila simply told him, "Hurry up and get ready." While sharpening his blade, he'd explained, "The only way to change the course of this war is to cripple the Golden Lions' military power." He added, "With Charles away from the main camp, this is our only chance." Back in the present, Attila's surprise attack slammed into Pippin. The vice captain was thrown backward by the sheer force of the impact. Attila sneered, "You should just stay down." The knights of the 2nd unit immediately swarmed to surround him. Hidden in the brush, Otto's men grew anxious. "Should we intervene?" He stopped them. "No, if you move, the entire plan is ruined." Seeing their confusion, Otto clarified with a grim smile, "The plan is to sit here and watch Attila crush them all by himself." Attila mused to himself. The original plan was just to hit Pippin and bounce. However, he now knew things weren't going to be that simple. As the knights charged, he braced himself for the fight. Attila leaped, spinning his weapon like a deadly cyclone. In a single fluid motion, he smashed several knights at once. 3 of them thrust their swords where he'd been moments before. Pippin saw his movement and screamed, "He's attacking from above!" Attila adjusted his body, aiming a direct blow straight into the ground. The impact was immense, causing a massive explosion of earth and rock. The shock wave ripped through the entire area. From his hiding spot, Otto just smirked. Everything's going exactly as planned. The dust began to settle, revealing knights being tossed through the air. Pippin was on the ground, his sword knocked from his hand. Ruach immediately planted himself in front to protect him. The vice captain finally realized how dire the situation was. The assault captain declared, "I will protect you just as I promised Charles." Pippin whispered his name, Ruach. His friend turned and vowed, "I'll protect you, just like the family you taught me to cherish." Happy memories of his comrades of Charles flashed through his mind. His resolve hardens. Family is something worth defending to the last breath. Raising his shield, Ruach prepares for battle. His mind narrows, focused only on the monster before him. He declares himself the unbreakable shield facing Attila. The barbarian smirks, genuinely impressed by his spirit. Ruach demands, "Are you the one they call the Butcher?" The young warrior grins back. That name is starting to stick. He announces, "I am Ruach, captain of the assault unit." With fire in his eyes, he vows, "And I will be the one to strike you down." Attila's only reply is a chilling smile. With a thunderous war cry, Ruach charges. He launches himself into the air, poising for a decisive strike. But Attila is faster, a blur of deadly motion. He leaps his own weapon, descending like a meteor, striking Ruach head-on. The captain has no time to react to the devastating impact. Pippin screams his comrade's name in horror. Ruach is sent flying backward, utterly defeated in a single blow. Attila turns away. "That should settle things." Pippin finally recognizes him. The infamous Butcher. At first he thinks his strength must be on par with Charles, but a cold dread washes over him. This man is a monster beyond comparison. He is a calamity that could shatter the Golden Lion. With newfound urgency, he roars the command, "Shield wall, form up now!" The soldiers instantly snap into a defensive formation around him. Attila notes with a smirk, as expected of Pippin, moving 100 men as if they were one. The soldiers' plummeting morale instantly reignites with purpose. The archers draw their bows, taking aim at their target. Pippin bellows the order. "Fire!" he roars again. "Garrison, form the phalanx." The men become a single entity of interlocking shields and spears. Watching from afar, Otto and his crew wonder, how can anyone break through that? Attila identifies the formation in an instant, a classic phalanx. It's a strategy where shields overlap to create an impenetrable wall. The soldiers advance like a single armored beast. Though simple, it offers perfect simultaneous defense, while allowing for devastating coordinated attacks. It's the ultimate counter to a scattered foe. Otto starts to panic. "Chief!" he yells. "They're marching right for us." Hearing this, the young barbarian shouts back, "Raise your shields too!" A system window flashes. Support skill tactic detection activated. Attila shouts a warning. Incoming, a storm of arrows is on its way. The phalanx soldiers hoist their shields, creating a shell of steel. A hail of arrows descends, only to be completely deflected by the compact defense. Attila stares impressed by the shield wall that nullified the attack. Otto is stunned. He was right. The arrows really came. He then squints into the distance. Wait a minute. What are those thicker projectiles heading this way? One of them slams into the earth, erupting with explosive force. Carrying his men, Attila sprints through the forest. Hold on tight, he shouts. He's thinned their ranks enough. It's time to retreat. But with those archers, there's no opening to escape. He suddenly tells his men, get down. They question him, panicked. Chief, are you leaving us behind? Attila scoffs. Never, as he gently sets them on the ground. He then turns to face the army alone. I'll stop them here, Pippin roars. Don't let him escape. Shoot him down. Another deadly volley darkens the sky, aimed right at him. But Attila doesn't retreat. He charges straight into it. His men can only watch in terror, shouting warnings about the arrow storm. He spins his massive weapon like a whirlwind, deflecting every single shot. The arrows are swatted aside like flies. He continues his relentless advance, weaving through the deadly rain of steel. Pippin and his soldiers watch his approach in disbelief. The vice captain wonders, how can one man deflect 100 arrows and still keep coming? He asks himself, his voice trembling, What kind of monster are we facing? Attila just grins as he readies his weapon. With a mighty roar, he hurls the spinning axe. The projectile becomes a blur of destruction, rocketing toward the phalanx. It smashes into the front line of shields and tears through men and steel as if they were made of paper. The axe arcs through the air, returning perfectly to Attila's hand. Wounded Pippin stumbles back, clutching his arm, realizing their perfect formation was shattered by a single throw. The surviving soldiers can only stare in terror at the demonic figure standing in the distance. The vice captain whispers a silent apology to Charles. He sinks to his knees, his will broken. My road ends here. Pippin bows his head, awaiting the final blow. But Attila simply comments, that was a pretty good fight, before turning and walking away. Pippin watches him go, letting out a roar of pure frustration and shame. Otto sighs in relief. Ooh. For a second there, I really thought we were toast. Right after he yells, all right. That means the chief has to carry us from now on. Attila raises an eyebrow. What was that? He announces. Actually, we're going to restart everyone's training from scratch. The mercenary's face falls. Just then, a messenger bird swoops down, landing gracefully on his arm. He takes the small scroll, his expression changing instantly. It's from Rashid. Without another word, Attila turns his horse, leaving his men behind. Otto yells after him, Hey, Chief, where are you going? But he has already gone galloping at full speed. Elsewhere on the battlefield, Charles, facing Manzuk, where a legendary battle was about to erupt. The message was urgent. Head to the Gaian region immediately. As Attila raced toward Chief Manzuk's location, a question haunted him. Why was the Black Wolf tribe entangled in a battlefield? He couldn't recall ever writing a scene like this in his original story. A memory surfaced, of Manzuk praising him, calling him a son. Then he remembered the tribe chief's wish for him to simply be happier. A desperate scream tore from Attila's throat as he rode onward. He vowed to save him at any cost, pleading for him to just hold on. The scene then cuts to the Black Wolf tribe's camp. A brutal assault was underway, splattering blood across the dirt. Charles Einhart loomed over a fallen warrior, demanding an answer. He sneered, asking if the man knew a barbarian wielding a massive axe. The warrior defiantly claimed to know no one of that description. Charles turned away, muttering what a shame it was. As he gripped his sword, the wounded warrior told him to wait. Charles paused, incredulous. Did you just tell me to wait? He declared that all barbarians were enemies of Aquitaine. His soldiers roared in agreement. Charles continued, claiming they launched a surprise attack, killing countless comrades. The men echoed his fury with another shout. Raising his sword high, he swore not to leave a single barbarian alive. But a powerful voice cut through the chaos, commanding him to wait. Charles turned surprised. I didn't expect you to show up here. Chief Manzuk revealed himself, his presence overwhelming. The legendary warrior known as the Martial God readied his stance for battle. Charles analyzed his opponent. An attack based on pure strength always had a moment of preparation. He figured his best chance was to strike the instant Manzuk raised his axe. But in a flash, the tribe chief hit first, sending him flying. Manzuk pressed his attack with a devastating blow. Charles blocked with his sword, stunned by his opponent's impossible speed. Manzuk scoffed, calling him an amateur for blocking from the side. He then surged forward with a powerful punch. The impact slammed into Charles' side. The sheer force sent him hurtling backward. Manzuk charged again, his axe a blur of motion. The chief was genuinely surprised to see Charles block his attacks twice. After landing, Charles began gathering energy in his hands. But Manzuk saw the opening his opponent's unstable footing and leaped forward. The knight looked up, facing the imminent attack. Manzuk called him inexperienced, raising his axe for the final decisive blow. The massive blade descended like judgment itself. But in that instant, a volley of projectiles shot through the air.
Charles's attack struck Monzuk head-on. The tribe chief's body was pierced in several places.
And yet he remained standing, his expression one of pure shock. Monzuk stared down at the wounds in his chest and shoulder. Charles then raised his sword, preparing his next assault. A series of level-up notifications flooded his vision. Finally, Charles declared with chilling confidence, "The more I fight, the stronger I become." Charles Einhart prepared to face Monzuk once more. The chief of the Black Wolf tribe noted the increased pressure from the sword. "This is getting interesting," he rumbled. He then raised his axe, a grim smile on his face. "At least I won't be bored." Charles watched his opponent's every move with intense focus. Monzuk slammed his axe into the ground with overwhelming force. The resulting shockwave threw Charles backward. He instantly recognized the technique of vacuum blade. Monzuk then closed the distance with a devastating side swing. Charles vaulted over the attack, narrowly escaping its deadly arc. Monzuk praised his reflexes, but gave him no time to recover, unleashing another attack. Charles found himself facing a deadly triple strike. The blows crashed into the ground, obliterating everything around them. Monzuk was shocked. Besides Awashi, no one had ever withstood that assault. As the dust settled, a massive greatsword came into view. Charles Einhart stood completely unscathed, holding his weapon with an iron grip. The tribe chief couldn't believe every single blow had been blocked. With a confident smirk, Charles announced, "Now it's my turn." He then braced himself for a powerful counterattack.
Charles raised his sword high above his head and brought it down in a thunderous strike. The attack landed squarely on Monzuk.
Charles Einhart remained standing as his legendary opponent fell to the earth. He declared Monzuk's defeat and demanded to know the butcher's location. The fallen chief responded only with a hearty laugh. Charles frowned, questioning his reaction. From the ground, Monzuk pointed. "Look behind you," he said. Charles turned to see what was rapidly approaching. With a heavy thud, Attila landed on the battlefield. "Looks like I made it just in time," he declared, his eyes blazing. "Get away from my father." Charles recognized him instantly. "The butcher!" Attila strode forward, his voice a low growl. "Move, or I'll move you myself." Charles, however, simply scoffed. "Then try." In a blinding flash, their weapons clashed. The two warriors locked in a brutal test of strength. The impact of their collision unleashed a massive shockwave. Charles's blade began to push Attila's axe back, but suddenly an intense pain shot through Attila's head. A system window appeared before his eyes, warning him he had encountered the story's protagonist, Charles Einhart. Immediately after, a new notification announced the activation of the Author Protection Program. Attila's body is paralyzed as a system authority activates. A second power awakens within him, the mind's eye.
A notification flashes before his eyes. The Author's Protection Program has engaged.
He wonders what this mind's eye truly is, but Charles gives him no time to think, lunging forward to continue his assault.
This is no time for distractions. He aims with deadly precision for his opponent's shoulder.
The sudden move is shocking. Still, Attila manages to evade the blow by a hair's breadth. The knight is stunned by the impossible dodge. A slight smile forms on Attila's face, a hint of admiration. He now understands. This enhanced perception is the power of the mind's eye. A new window appears.
It displays Charles's combat power, 500. Attila notes this is 100 points higher than in the original story.
Moments later, the number climbs to 503. His adversary's power is rising in real time.
Faced with this new information, he adjusts his strategy. Another system window reveals Attila's combat power is 800.
He concludes that dragging this fight out will be dangerous. Just then, Charles Einhart charges forward with blinding speed. He decides to exploit a clear opening in his opponent's form, but Attila is taken aback by the sheer speed of the attack.
He parries the strike and realizes the sword itself is accelerating. Charles aims to shatter his weapon, striking directly at Attila's axe. The knight seems to predict his movements before he even makes them. The knight's offensive is relentless, each strike impossibly precise. The blade barely grazes Attila's body. He quickly recovers his stance. This isn't over yet. His eyes scan desperately for an opening. Seizing the smallest gap, Attila unleashes a fierce counterattack. Charles is caught completely off guard by the sudden reversal. Attila intercepts the blade and seizes his adversary's wrist. With a sharp motion, he twists his arm with immense force. In one fluid movement, he throws Charles over his shoulder. Attila then prepares for the finishing blow. He unleashes a powerful kick straight into the knight's chest. The blow lands with a sickening thud. As he lands, he declares, "It's over." Charles's blood drips onto the dirt. Yet the wounded knight staggers to his feet, still ready to fight. Attila's eyes widen. He's still standing. A system window shows Charles's combat power has reached 800. The number ticks up again, 810. He realizes the value is rising without end. His power growth is accelerating.
Attila smirks, acknowledging the might of the protagonist he himself created.
Charles Einhard advances once more, weapon raised. His very presence has become overwhelming.
Attila watches him intently. This man is truly special. The more they clash, the more Attila dodges, the more Charles's power overflows. With a determined grin, he decides to go all out. He leaps into the air for a decisive final attack. However, a flash of steel cuts him directly in the chest. Even wounded, he vows, "I will defeat you, Charles." Charles roars that he will walk the path of the Supreme King. He lunges forward, unleashing his ultimate attack. The blade cuts deep into Attila's body. The impact of the final strike devastates the entire landscape. Charles Einhard watches the smoke slowly begin to clear. From a distance, Munuk watches the scene in stunned silence. Charles turns, sensing a strange new presence. A wave of pure energy violently throws him backward.
He can't believe it. His opponent survived, and yet Attila rises from the center of the rubble.
With a firm smile, he faces Charles once again. Their eyes meet, and Attila warns him. "Here I come." Charles's instincts scream with alarm. Attila slams his fist into the ground, raising a thick curtain of dust.
Surprised by the strange move, Charles looks up. Attila then kicks the knight's fallen sword directly at him.
The weapon hits the ground and causes a massive explosion. Amidst the smoke, Charles yells that he's been blinded.
Attila appears behind him, ready to land a critical blow. The knight spins around frantically to defend himself.
Attila delivers a two-fisted hammer blow. The attack lands squarely on Charles's chest.
Following up with another punch, Attila yells, "Eat this and go to sleep!" But Charles twists his body, intercepting the strike.
In the same motion, he grabs the hilt of his sword from the ground. He swiftly blocks Attila's incoming fist. Attila is shocked by the unexpected defense. Smiling, Charles asks, "Are you only just noticing?" A system window reveals his attack power has reached 900, and Attila sees it's still climbing. Charles lunges with his sword, but Attila blocks the blow with his arms. His attack power rises to 901. The meter climbs again, reaching 902. They exchange an intense flurry of blows. Charles's power grows without limit. The knight charges, screaming, "Die!" Attila is thrown back by the force. Despite the brutal assault, he grits his teeth, ready for a counterattack. Attila lunges forward with a fist, aiming to end this now. His bare knuckles slam directly into the flat of Charles's blade. The impact sends cracks, spider-webbing through the steel. With a roar, Attila unleashes his true power. The blow shatters the sword and blasts Charles away. The shockwave alone freezes the entire battlefield. Charles Einhard hits the dirt completely out of the fight. Attila stands victorious, breathing heavily. A heavy silence falls over the aftermath of their duel. He walks over to Munuk, asking if his father is okay. Munuk assures him he's fine and tells him not to worry. Attila helps him to his feet, receiving a quiet word of thanks. The tribe's chief marvels at how much he's grown since they last saw each other. The comment catches Attila off guard, and he turns to his father. Munuk explains that during the fight, his eyes held a certain madness. It was the look of a true warrior, one who utterly dominates the battlefield. He concludes that his son clearly hasn't
been slacking off on his training. Attila has no idea what rigorous training he's even talking about. He then trails off, lost in thought, and Munuk asks what's on his mind. As they walk, Charles calls out to him, "Butcher, wait!" Attila turns to face the fallen knight. Charles demands he finish the job, saying that showing mercy now would be a meaningless insult. He asks if his rival will only continue to become more powerful. He then issues a challenge: grow, even stronger, so they can one day fight again. Watching the projection, Bae wonders how Attila is so powerful. She speculates that he might serve a war god like Ares or Tyre. A man appears beside her, noting her intense interest. The witch addresses him coolly as Ribaru. The mage raises his glass, remarking that Attila is a fascinating warrior indeed. Ribaru offers her a smabachi cocktail, describing its fragrant, slightly salty taste. He notes that the maibayao, poison spreading in his mouth, is a rather pleasant stimulus. Bathory, Elizabeth looks at him, saying he is a truly curious man. She then questions if he isn't getting a little too involved. Ribaru simply replies that watching from the sidelines is so boring. He confesses a desire to know the life of a bird and even the existence of a completely useless man. A moment later, he adds that he wants to know what it's like to live as an insect. Bathory notes his strong spirit for inquiry, but warns him not to get carried away, like a child who accidentally crushes the bug he was trying to catch. Ribaru simply says, "I know it," turning to face her. Then he reveals with a smile that it was all just a joke. Outside, the soldiers cheer that the butcher has defeated the Lion King and the Kiri mercenaries have crushed the Golden Lion Knights. The news of the Lion King's defeat spreads like wildfire.
In the days that follow, the Kiri mercenary corps continues, their relentless advance turning the tide of war in Gaskin's favor. But suddenly, citing exhaustion on both sides, a truce is declared. One of the mercenaries can't believe they were invited to the Duke's own residence, calling the entire situation a dream. He celebrates, boasting about their military fame and how they're finally moving up in the world. Attila dryly remarks that it's a nice change from being hunted like common thieves. The man gets defensive, claiming it was all for survival and they had no other choice. Still, Attila just stares, asking if that's really the whole story. The man quickly changes the subject, complaining that their boss has zero compassion. He turns to Biamma, the small creature on Attila's shoulder, asking, "The little bear dude agrees, right?" Attila corrects him flatly. "He's not a bear dude." The mercenary panics, pleading with them to at least give the little guy a name. Attila glances at the creature on his shoulder and mulls it over. He turns to the fluff ball and asks if it even wants a name. The small white creature shakes its head with surprising intensity. Ignoring this, Attila decides it should be something that sounds strong. With a grin, he asks, "How about Punch?" The creature's eyes light up and it hugs his face excitedly. "Whoa, you actually liked it," Attila asks, surprised. A system window pops into view confirming the name Punch, which only confuses him more. The system then registers Punch as an illusory beast. All of its accumulated experience points are instantly calculated. Suddenly, Punch begins, leveling up again and again and again. Attila stares at the stats, noting that a combat power of 50 is actually quite high. Just then, the system reveals the monster inventory option. He wonders what on earth a monster inventory is. At that exact moment, a blade whistles past his head, putting him on high alert. One of his men cries out, shocked by the sudden attack. The other mercenaries shout in confusion, trying to figure out what's happening. Attila yanks his horse's reins and yells for everyone to be on guard as he draws his own weapon. He sees something strange about the weapon that was thrown. It's an assassin's dagger, a specialized hidden weapon used only by professional killers. Attila's eyes widen as he realizes who's here. And there she was, the mastermind behind the attack. A warrior clad in battle gear appeared, introducing herself as Caspi Aiden. Otto was instantly captivated by her stunning appearance, but Attila smacked him back to reality, warning him to stay focused. The blow knocked him clean off his horse. Scrambling to his feet, he sheepishly admitted he was an idiot and asked for a gentler approach. Caspi scoffed, questioning if they were really a mercenary corps. In her eyes, they looked laughably weak. With a smirk, she challenged them to witness her power. She triggered a device, unleashing several crimson orbs into the air. The objects rained down around Attila and his men. A moment later, they exploded, sending the horses into a panic. The terrified animals thrashed violently, throwing the other mercenaries from their saddles in a chaotic mess. One of them panicked, shouting about the explosions. Attila yelled back to calm down, explaining they were just simple fireworks. The fallen men stared at him as he sighed at their incompetence. With a taunting smile, Caspi warned that the real show was just beginning. The special class assassin moved and vanished in the blink of an eye. Attila was stunned. She had disappeared completely. He quickly realized they were surrounded by enemies in the forest, sighing at the troublesome situation. Suddenly, one of his men was snagged by a rope trap. Attila's head whipped around, knowing exactly what came next, the spike trap above. The mercenary screamed, realizing Caspi was a true master of traps. Attila lunged forward, shoving his man out of harm's way. He yelled at him to move or be crushed, but in that instant, Attila's own foot became stuck in a gooey substance on the ground. The adhesive trap held him completely fast. The deadly stakes plunged downward, striking the ground and his unfortunate men. Attila roared, calling her a witch. He immediately activated his tactical detection skill, revealing countless traps spread throughout the area. The sheer number was overwhelming. It was as if they'd stumbled into a death zone designed by fate itself. A shadow darted between the trees. The assassin smiled, satisfied with the success of her deadly playground. Attila pushed himself up, declaring with absolute certainty that his feet wouldn't be caught so easily again. So he took to the skies, leaping high into the air. He was determined to break through everything, even from above. Caspi watched, shocked by his unorthodox reaction. Seeing him darting between trees, she wondered what in the world was wrong with this guy. Attila blazed through the branches at incredible speed. He spotted her target during his last leap, confirming the path ahead was clear. Soon enough, he saw her on a higher branch. Attila charged forward, determined to end this little game once and for all. Caspi launched a storm of chains in his direction, screaming for him not to come any closer. But Attila dodged the assault with a single fluid motion. Caspi just smirked, revealing that was only a feint. He leaped backward as more chains erupted from below, finally realizing her weapon was a wicked chained dagger. Attila braced himself for the real attack. A moment later, he found himself completely ensnared by her chains. Caspi warned him that struggling was useless. The chains she explained were dwarven steel that could rip his limbs right off. With a confident grin, Attila replied that was precisely his point. With a mighty roar, he began shattering the links, yelling that this wasn't nearly enough to hold him. Caspi shrieked in shock as she was suddenly captured. Now she was the one left dangling from a tree, demanding to be released. Attila demanded to know who her client was. She refused to answer, stating that an assassin's code of honor prevented it.
Left with no choice, he activated his mind's eye. The assassin's thoughts screamed, cursing that bastard Roland for not warning her about such a monster. And just like that, Attila had his answer. Roland was the one who hired her.
This exposed the truth behind the so-called truce between Aquitaine and Gascony. On paper, the reason was that both armies were exhausted. But the reality was a fierce succession dispute brewing within Gascony. He found it pathetic. They were still trying to eliminate their own side's mercenaries, just like in the original storyline. A small smile touched his lips as he decided to ensure Saxon would become the next heir. Attila then gathered his men to depart. Caspi yelled after them, asking where they were going. One of the mercenaries just waved, calling her Kitty, as a single crow watched from a branch.
Attila and his men soon arrived at the massive estate of Duke Gascon. One of the mercenaries was awestruck by the sheer scale of the mansion.
He gawked that Gascon must be insanely wealthy. Attila, unfazed, simply told them to keep moving. They entered the mansion's ridiculously luxurious hall. The whole group was floored by what they saw. Everyone marveled at the lavish decor and the feast laid out before them. Otto the Demon Sword immediately asked if he could get a taste.
Attila shot him a sharp look, telling him to mind his manners. Just then a man approached, welcoming them warmly.
Attila and Otto turned in surprise to face their host. He introduced himself as Saxon Gascony, the second son of the Gascony family. Otto instantly recognized their benefactor, thanking him profusely. Saxon smiled, expressing his own thanks to the Kiri mercenaries, the legendary mercenary corps. Thanks to them, so many soldiers made it home. The men react with humility, while Otto offers to share all the glorious details. Just then, a new figure approaches, identifying them as the Kiri mercenary corps. It is Roland Gascony, the firstborn son of the great Gascony family. Saxon calls out to his brother Roland, but he turns with a sneer, disgusted that such bandit trash would dare show their faces here. He follows up with a chilling threat, warning them that if they step out of line, there will be no mercy. Instantly, the guards snap into an attack formation. A bewildered Otto asks, "Did we do something wrong?" He wonders aloud if it was the appetizer he ate, and Attila dryly replies, "Maybe." Attila recognizes Roland as the man behind the assassination attempt. He notes that just like in the original novel, Roland's arrogance and pride are completely off the charts. Saxon steps forward, questioning if that's any way to treat the heroes of the war. Roland barks at his brother to shut up. "Is that how you speak to your elder, acting like you're the successor already?" Saxon calmly retorts that Roland is the one being disgraceful. The elder brother simply grumbles and storms away. Saxon turns back to the mercenaries, apologizing for the embarrassing scene. He departs, telling them to enjoy the reception without a care. Otto remarks on the intense sibling drama, but Attila shoots him a look. "And you can still think about food right now." Duke Gascony calls for a toast, raising his glass high. The head of the house toasts to the glorious future awaiting them all. The mercenaries raise their glasses in unison, and Otto compliments the exquisite taste of the wine. Attila takes a single sip when his eyes narrow. Something is terribly wrong. Suddenly, Duke Gascony begins to cough up blood. He staggers and collapses as guests scream for his grace. The Duke coughs violently, blood gushing as he clutches his neck. He then crumples to the floor completely as the entire hall shouts his name in horror. Desperate, his son rushes forward, screaming for his father. Another man kneels beside the Duke, quickly checking his condition. With a face drained of all color, he yells to the crowd, "The Duke is dead!" Upon hearing the news, the entire hall is frozen in shock. A short distance away, a young man watches the unfolding chaos with a grave expression. Spinning around, Roland points an accusing finger directly at him. "It was you. This is all your fault." He bellows for all to hear, "Saxon, you murdered our father." Completely stunned, Saxon denies the charge, insisting he did nothing. At his word, the mansion guards move as one swiftly surrounding the young man. "Roland!" Saxon yells, outraged. "What is the meaning of this?" Gesturing towards the mercenaries, Roland accuses him of bringing assassins into their home. Saxon sees through the pathetic scheme, retorting that this is no time for such obvious ploys. "Liar!" Roland screams, insisting Saxon killed their father to become the next heir. Pointing to his companions, Roland shouts that Saxon used them in his vile plan. The other nobles can only watch the scene unfold in terror. Saxon keeps his cool, realizing Roland is making a simple power play. Roland then declares that since the assassination failed, the next step is a public execution. Analyzing the guards, Saxon realizes they're much stronger than they were in the original story. He and his men are completely surrounded, the tips of countless spears aimed right at them. His men prepare to fight back, ready for battle. But Zaxxon immediately shouts a command ordering them not to interfere under any circumstances. He warns that if they draw their weapons, there will be no chance to explain. Searching for a way out, he activates his special ability, Mind's Eye. But just then, an unexpected system window appears before him with a startling error message. The message reads that the ability cannot be used on a target of unknown identity. He's confused. What on earth is an unknown identity? He glares at his enemy. That has to be Roland. He grits his teeth. Could it be a look-alike, an assassin in disguise? He dismisses the idea. His senses are too sharp. He would have picked up the scent.
Pointing at the group, Roland shrieks an order to the guards. "Finish them all." The soldiers advance with their spears ready to strike.
"Chief, what do we do?" one of his men shouts in desperation. Without a word, Zaxxon snatches a golden object from a nearby table.
Seeing this completely unexpected action, Roland can only stare with a surprised look on his face.
With a swift, powerful motion, Zaxxon hurls the object directly at him. The startled guards duck as the projectile flies past them. It hits Roland squarely in the chest, violently piercing through him and creating a massive hole. The attack rips straight through his torso. Completely shocked, his companions scream in disbelief at what they just witnessed. The entire hall erupts into panic as a guard captain roars for his immediate capture. "Chief Us," his men cry out, worried about the dire situation. But Zaxxon now senses something in the air, a strange power his senses can't quite identify. And even with a gaping wound in his chest, Roland begins to smile. This is impossible for a human. As his chest wound healed itself, mystical chains burst into existence around him. His men could only shout in disbelief. What in the world was that power? He quickly assessed the situation. This had to be some form of magic. Suddenly, everything in the hall began to float, whipping violently through the air. As he was thrown back, his eyes caught a single strange feather. That feather hovered in the center of the hall, untouched by the chaotic explosion. Elsewhere, a mysterious hand swirled a glass of wine. He was revealed to be the monarch of Delmar's Terrace. Watching the chaos with an amused smile, he murmured that things were finally getting interesting. Back at the mansion, a familiar blue screen appeared, an emergency mission for our main character. He stared at the notification. His eyes widened at the words before him. The mission: defeat the Crow Monarch. The reward unimaginable.
Just then, a massive attack rained down from the heavens, striking the building with devastating force.
The group braced against the powerful shockwave. As the dust settled, a sorcerer appeared before the crowd. Overflowing with immense power, the narrator explains that sorcerers are beings whose strength is utterly incomprehensible to mortals. They are an existence far superior to humanity. With a flick of his wrist, he unleashed an attack on the entire group at once. Dashing through the carnage, one of the younger mercenaries screamed at the horrific sight. It was like a hawk hunting a helpless insect. The sorcerer's attack continued to tear through their ranks. Their screams echoed across the grounds. The truth was simple. A human could never hope to defeat a sorcerer. From a distance, the survivors watched the field of fallen bodies. But among the dead, a single hand began to rise. A low groan escaped its lips. The man turned his head towards them, hissing as he pointed forward.
One of his comrades yelled, "What is that thing?" All around them, the other fallen soldiers began to rise, slowly shambling in their direction.
Seeing the undead horde approach, the leader cursed that the situation had gone from bad to worse. Just then, the young man in the red scarf gave a warning.
"They're coming for us, with everything they've got." Led by the terrifying sorcerer, the controlled puppets charged toward them.
As the horde crashed into him, the man desperately called for a protective shield. They had to stop this advance. The mercenaries formed a wall with their shields. Using this brief opening, he lunged toward one of the controlled soldiers. With a single decisive strike, he planted his feet firmly on the ground, ready for the battle to come.
The fight raged on as the group faced the horde head-on. Seeing the sheer number of enemies, he prepared a powerful two-handed attack.
Is this impossible? He wondered, knowing he couldn't bring himself to kill his own soldiers. A mercenary struggled to tell his chief,
"Sir, there are too many to hold back." He realized there was no more time. He had to defeat their master Liebel himself.
Watching from above, the sorcerer just smiled, making a casual gesture with his hand. But then the leader noticed something. Something was forming on the ground around him. In an instant, glowing magic circles appeared, trapping the entire mercenary group.
Without warning, the circles erupted in a massive explosion. Caught completely off guard, he screamed, trying to shield himself from the blast. It was a combination attack from the soldiers and the sorcerer's magic.
From a distance, the sorcerer relentlessly launched another spell directly at them.
Hit squarely by the blast, he was sent flying with no chance to counter. Beside him, another soldier cried for help as he was cut down.
Watching his men get slaughtered, he felt powerless. What am I supposed to do? The sorcerer merely grumbled in annoyance.
With an overwhelming sense of superiority, he sighed and said, "I'm starting to get bored." As he prepared a new attack, he asked, "Isn't it about time we ended this little game?" Seeing the terrifying power gather, a mercenary screamed in absolute terror.
A gigantic spell formation materialized in the sky. What? What is that? He could only stare frozen at the power gathering above. This was the true power of a sorcerer. To defend against this, the narrator says he would need the Muhail sword. Filled with dread, he heard a small squeak from the creature perched on his shoulder.
He yelled for his companion, "Punch, get inside and hide." Immediately after, a system notification appeared. Right before his eyes, the command was confirmed. The creature responded, activating the monster inventory.
He then called out to his companion Punch, readying for battle. It is explained that Punch is a guardian beast capable of storing items.
Activating the inventory, he bellowed, "Bring out my sword, the mighty Muhyol." The small creature opened its mouth wide,
Ready to spit out the legendary blade. But suddenly it began to choke. "Punch, what's wrong?" he shouted. Without another moment's delay, the creature hacked, finally spitting the sword out of its mouth. In one fluid motion, he grasped his legendary weapon, the Muhyol sword. Seeing this utterly bizarre scene, the mercenaries were frozen in pure confusion. But the sorcerer just smirked.
"And just what was that?" he demands. Now armed, he roars for the sorcerer to shut his mouth, warning him that his laughter is about to die. With those final words, he explodes forward, charging his opponent.
Facing the attack, the sorcerer simply smirks. "Not bad," he remarks. He then casually raises a hand and begins to gather his own power. "Allow me," he says confidently, "to show you the difference in our leagues." From above, an immense wave of power descends upon the battlefield. Seeing it coming, one of the men screams a warning. The energy surges like a tsunami toward everyone in the hall. Leaping over the tentacles, our hero prepares for an aerial counterattack. Gripping his sword with both hands, he channels his power for a single devastating blow. With one vertical slash, he cleaves the enormous mass of magic in two. The impact sends the mercenaries flying back from the clash.
Seeing his spell shattered, the sorcerer stares his eyes wide with disbelief. Pushed back by the shockwave, he struggles
to stay on his feet. He explains that this is no ordinary sword. It carries divine protection. He reveals that. His blade is in fact an anti-magic weapon. Fired up by this reveal, the mercenaries roar their leader's name. How could my magic be broken by a warrior with no mana, he wonders. He then comments that the power of the eastern tribes is truly immense. A wicked smile spreads across his face. "This is all rather amusing," he says, preparing a new spell and asking what he thinks of this one. Ready to fight, the warrior signals his companion to advance with him.
The sorcerer unleashes a barrage of energy spheres in his direction. He defends with his sword, managing
to deflect the incoming attacks. "Incredible," the sorcerer exclaims, praising his opponent's skill. While cutting through the magic, the warrior yells that it hurts and the attacks just won't stop. The only way to end this is to destroy the magic circle itself. But looking around, he finds nothing. There is no circle. Confused, he wonders how this is possible without a massive formation. From above, the sorcerer taunts him, looking for something. "It's right here." Looking up at the mage, the warrior finally understands. Immediately, he launches himself with great force toward the enemy in the air. With a powerful roar, he hurls his sword with all his might. Surprised, the sorcerer wonders if he just threw his sword away, but the blade flies high, aiming directly for the chandelier on the ceiling. Seeing the true target, the sorcerer's face fills with shock. With a direct hit, the sword shatters the large chandelier. As it falls, it pierces the magic circle that was hidden there all along. Upon impact, the sword triggers a massive explosion of magical power. Desperate, the mage screams, "My magic circle! What have you done?" He continues shouting that he can't use his magic, that it's all over. But then his tune changes. He grins and says, "Just kidding." Even without his weapon, the warrior charges the sorcerer. The mage explains that he can create a smaller magic circle any time he wants. Launching an attack, he warns that this is enough for an unarmed brute. Seeing the spell, the warrior roars, activating his monster inventory again. He extends his hand, calling once more for his sword, Muhyol. But this time, the creature just chomps down hard on his arm. So instead, he hurls the creature itself at the sorcerer. The confused mage yells at him to wait and stop what he's doing. Screaming for him to die, he charges his enemy with everything he has left. Getting close, he lands a powerful punch directly on the sorcerer's face. With that final blow, the sorcerer's body completely dissolves before his eyes. The force of the punch continues on, shattering the wall at the back of the hall. He then realizes he felt zero resistance when the punch landed. Not understanding, he stands frozen, trying to process what just happened. A moment later, several black feathers begin to drift down slowly from the ceiling. Looking up, he sees the sorcerer, now a crow, fleeing and bidding him farewell. "You coward!" he roars. "Get back here and fight!" but from a distance the crow caused that it was fun fighting Attila. It continues. How amusing for a mage to be defeated by a mere human. But suddenly,
Something strikes the crow in mid-flight. Extending his hand, the warrior warns, "I won't let you escape."
on the ground the crow is impaled by a spear that appeared from nowhere. The spear immediately begins to dissolve the crow's body with its holy power. He is stunned by this completely unexpected turn of events. As it's being destroyed,
The crow lets out a final agonizing scream of pain. As he's being erased, the crow realizes this situation has turned
very bad for him. As he dissolves, he screams about the divine artifact that struck him down. And before the warrior, the sorcerer's body vanishes completely. Exhausted after the long battle, he wonders if he's finally won. With the mage's defeat, the controlled soldiers all stand motionless. Slowly, they begin to come to their senses, asking, "What was happening?" One of the mercenaries suddenly shouted that the soldiers were turning back to normal. A wild cheer erupted from the men as they roared that their victory was finally sealed. Just then, one of his companions rushed over to see the boss. Getting closer, he complained that the boss should have warned them about the sword. Telling him to quiet down, the boss snapped back that he should have been helping instead.
The mercenary tried to make an excuse, and the boss admitted that their foe had been a dangerous one.
But as he glanced to the side, the mercenary's face filled with concern. With a look of pure panic, he yelled that his boss was bleeding out. His strength finally giving out, he collapsed and began to fall. Seeing his boss go down, the mercenary screamed his name in utter desperation. The scene shifts, and we see the sorcerer appear elsewhere, musing that it was all rather fun. Speaking to a woman, he mentioned that if Bittori hadn't intervened, he would have been killed. Using her magic on him, she replied that she hadn't exactly saved him. She explained that she was merely regenerating a small part of his body. As she spoke, she clutched a glowing fragment of his very soul to continue the process. He asked her not to be so cold, reminding her that they were two sides of the same coin. With a smirk, he asked if she was upset that he tried to eliminate Attila. She simply stared back at him, letting out a grunt of pure disapproval. She denied being angry, but he just kept insisting that she was. She finally admitted it was true, but added that she also felt incredibly grateful. Explaining her reasoning, she said that Attila had proven himself worthy of wielding Muil. What's more, she declared that his victory over the sorcerer had made her absolutely certain. He said nothing, simply staring at her with a look of complete confusion. Revealing her grand design, she said that Attila will rule the world through a river of blood. She concluded that he is the berserker destined to fulfill their ultimate dream. Meanwhile, he was licked in the face, grumbling as he slowly regained consciousness in bed. Annoyed by the sensation, he complained about the awful smell and told his companion to knock it off. In the next moment, he shot up in bed and angrily roared Punch's name. Looking around the room, he wondered where on earth he was. Just then, a system window flashed into existence before him, displaying an important notification. Seeing the screen, he questioned if the sudden quest was already over. He tried to remember the fight, recalling that he passed out right after taking down the crow monster. A new window then appeared, informing him that his rewards were being distributed. Reading the text, he saw he had gained a party system and a new skill. Analyzing his new power, he wondered just how strong the warrior's roar truly was. Feeling confident, he concluded that this new skill would be the most powerful of all. Celebrating, he declared he was going to finish off the crow, but the system informed him that it was still alive.
A line of narration explains that this creature doesn't die just from having its head severed.
He then muttered to himself that as the story's author, he was the one who knew that fact best.
Suddenly, a voice from outside the room alerted him to the door. A mercenary burst in, asking in surprise if the boss was already awake.
He immediately told his other companion to go and gather everyone. Seeing the panic, the boss asked Otto what had happened. At that, his companion replied that he had been terribly worried about the entire ordeal.
Arriving moments later, the other mercenaries asked if their boss was truly all right. They cheered that he had come back to life, but he insisted he never died in the first place. Shortly thereafter, evidence surrounding the assassination of Duke Gascini was discovered. With this proof, the true mastermind Lauron was finally arrested for treason. Saxon was then officially appointed the new Duke of the Gascony territory. Over at the tavern, the mercenaries were celebrating and toasting with their reward money. Raising a glass with his boss, one of them commented that the battle was finally over. The boss agreed, saying that Gascony could now rest in peace. Curious, the mercenary asked the boss about his plans for the future. Just then, Saxon arrived at the tavern and called out formally for Lord Attila. He asked if his body was feeling better. Saying he was fine, Attila thanked Saxon for allowing him to recover. Saxon then announced that he had brought the items he had promised them. Seeing the treasure chest, he said he had been looking forward to this moment. Finding it unfair, a mercenary complained that the boss couldn't take everything for himself. Looking at his companions, he prepared to give them a fitting response. He then called them a bunch of greedy fools. Laughing at the scene, Saxon revealed that the chest contained the deed to a territory. Stunned by the news, they asked what territory he was talking about.
He then confirmed that he would deliver it all directly to Sir Otto. Unable to process what he was hearing, Otto asked if the gift was really for him. Pointing to his friend Attila, confirmed that the territory now belonged entirely to him. Overcome with excitement, Otto asked if this meant he could become a noble again. With the deed in his hands, he celebrated, shouting that he had escaped a life of poverty. Everyone then raised their glasses, shouting, "Long live the new lord." A moment later, they also toasted, shouting, "Long live Lord Attila." After the celebration ended, a quiet night fell upon the tavern. The next day, he set out alone on his horse, riding toward the horizon. With his companions grumbling in his ears, he knew there was no other choice. From now on, his enemies would be those who wielded magic. He was certain leaving Otto and the others behind was the right call. With a grim look, he prepared for the journey ahead. "Let's go," he muttered, urging his horse down the lonely road. But after just a moment, a noise from behind made him turn his head, and there was Otto galloping after him, yelling for him to wait up. Stunned, he could only stare as his friend raced to catch him. A huge grin was plastered on Otto's face as he laughed, closing the distance. Waving a hand, he shouted that he was coming along for the ride. Glancing back, he just watched Otto's ridiculous approach. Annoyed, he asked, "Are you still drunk from last night's party?" "Not at all," Otto denied, proudly puffing out his chest. "Back when I was a noble, I left everything to my subordinates. They'll be fine without me." His patience wearing thin, he snapped, "Our contract is over. I don't need you following me." Otto paused for a moment, then admitted, "At first, I really hated you, boss." Confused, he demanded to know what Otto was talking about. But his friend just explained that no matter what, he always protected everyone. He went on reminding him how he'd given status and land to former bandits. "I want to see more of the world with you," Otto finished. Hearing this, our hero could only think that his friend had truly lost his mind. Then he noticed Otto was holding another horse's reins. "What is that?" Even the tiny creature on his shoulder seemed confused. Fed up with the whole situation, he let out a heavy sigh and resumed his journey. "Fine," he grumbled. "Do whatever you want." With a look of pure joy, Otto cheered, "I finally got what I wanted." He then eagerly asked, "So boss, where are we headed next?" And so, leaving Gascini behind, the two rode on together with Otto, shouting excitedly. The journey now included a knight and a bear. As they crossed the open fields, Otto yelled, "Could you at least tell me our destination?" Meanwhile, at the residence of the Lord of Aquitaine, the guards at the door heard a voice telling them to wait just a moment. Inside, a knight questioned the Lord's plan. "Bring an assassin here," he roared, slamming his fist on the table. "That's impossible." His voice filled with rage, he shouted, "That man killed my companion Ruach!" But the leader calmly stated that Attila's strength was undeniable. He continued explaining that Attila would be an incredibly useful ally. But the knight refused to listen, yelling that he could never accept that decision. "Fine," the leader declared. "I will defeat him in combat and then bring him in." Then came the shocking reveal. "With Attila," he said, "I can become even stronger." The knight was stunned into silence, staring at his leader in disbelief. Back in the forest, night had fallen. But hidden in the brush, a mysterious pair of eyes watched their every move. As they were eating by the fire, a giant snake lunged out of the darkness. Otto screamed in terror. Without even pausing his meal, he effortlessly snatched the creature by its neck, and then casually tossed it far into the woods. Otto, still shaking, asked, "Can't we take a safer route?" His boss replied coldly, "We're going to kill a mage. There are no safe routes." "Is the Crow Lord really alive?" Otto asked. He confirmed it. Extending his hand, he called, "Punch, bring me the Mewhill sword." With that, the small creature began roasting the snake over the fire. Suddenly, the Mewhill sword began to pulse with an intense energy. Sensing the reaction, he shot to his feet, startling Otto. The system announced it had detected the observer's magical energy. In response, the sword unleashed a beam of light. He explained, "Mewhill has memorized that energy and sealed its owner's fate." He turned around abruptly, making Otto jump. What was that?" He simply pointed to the skewer. The snake meat was now completely charred. Holding the burnt offering, Otto whined that his dinner was ruined. They settled back down by the fire, continuing their meal in the quiet forest. Now, much calmer, Otto happily chomped on a new piece of meat. Beside him, his boss and the mascot also ate their dinner peacefully. But they weren't alone. A massive creature watched from the shadows. Baring its fangs, a giant wolf stared intently at the pair. Moments later, an entire pack of wolves charged toward their camp. Seeing them approach, Otto screamed in pure panic. "This is strange," he thought. "Wolves shouldn't have left the deep forest." Just then, a system window appeared, a new mission to defeat the pack. Along with the mission, a vision flashed in his mind, the sorcerer behind this attack. A setup, he realized. What is that mage plotting now? At his side, Otto drew his sword, his hands trembling as he prepared for battle. He braced himself, ready to face the oncoming threat. Seeing his companion frozen in place, he called out, "Get ready!" He then warned, "The attack is coming. You take one of them down." A small, confident smirk appeared on his face. "I can't," Otto yelled back in desperation. Stunned, he asked, "What do you mean you can't?" With tears streaming down his face, Otto confessed, "I'm just a merchant, not a knight." He pleaded with his friend to run, but it was already too late to even stand against the monster. He tells him to quit whining, assuring Otto he'll be just fine. A party system window suddenly appears asking to form a group. He just smirks and tells Otto to try his best not to die.
With a battle cry, Otto charges in, landing a heavy strike on a wolf. He stumbles back breathless from the raw exertion of battle. He parries a vicious counterattack, holding the wolf back with his sword. Then steel clashes against Fang as they exchange another series of blows.
A sudden realization hits him. He's actually holding his own. Could it be that he's strong? He dodges a lunge, throwing himself aside to evade its claws. Letting out a roar of defiance, he prepares to strike back. He lunges forward, plunging his sword deep into the beast's chest. The wolf is thrown back by the force of the blow, slumping to the ground, defeated.
A confident smirk spreads across his face as he surveys his victory. He proved he could handle himself in a tough spot. Now it's time to go help the boss. Meanwhile, his boss casually crushes a wolf under his boot. Without a second thought, he grabs another by the scruff and uses it as a weapon against the pack. With a mighty heave, he launches the wolf into the snarling horde. A crazed laugh escapes his lips as he tears through the wolves. Watching this, Otto can't help but think. His boss is the real monster here. He lands a devastating blow on the alpha. Once the pack is wiped out, he stands still, his expression turning serious. He sighs in relief. Good thing they were only wolves. The narration explains monsters here aren't like the ones in comics. In a blur of motion, he vanishes, charging the next foe in the woods. A single punch lands with overwhelming force, giving the creature no time to even scream. The massive alpha wolf lets out a furious snarl at the sight. He glares back, his eyes burning with rage as he prepares to attack. He glances to the side and yells, "Punch, get in here," answering the summons. Punch rushes in, slamming into the giant wolf. With the wolf defeated, Punch levels up and lets out a victorious roar. He turns his attention back to Otto, who's still in his own fight. Just then, a system message appears. Party effects activated.
He watches for a moment, noting that his companion is handling himself well. "All right," he says, cracking his knuckles. "Time to finish this." A grim smile plays on his lips. Only one left. Realizing it's doomed, the final wolf turns tail and flees into the forest.
"You're not getting away!" he shouts, leaping onto its back. He raises his axe high, ready to deliver the final blow. But out of nowhere, a chain scythe shoots out from the trees. It wraps perfectly around the handle of his axe.
His axe is violently ripped from his grasp, allowing the wolf to escape. The force sends Otto flying with a shocked scream. Holding the chain tight, he wonders, did Caspi finally show up? He stares into the forest, contemplating his unseen enemy. The chain begins to retract back into the woods. "Good instincts," he mutters, impressed. But as the chain is pulled back, he acts fast, wrapping it around his arm to anchor it in place. A voice echoes from the darkness of the trees. "You will die without ever knowing our names." He grips the chain and scoffs. "Oh, I think I know exactly who you are. Saba of the Chain Scythe." A figure steps out from the shadows, weapon in hand. Hidden amongst the leaves, he glares at his target, his expression deadly serious. He holds his ground chain in hand, waiting for his foe's next move. Saba, he identifies him, one of the 7 master assassins. Without warning, Saba hurls another chain weapon. This one strikes the fallen axe on the ground with pinpoint accuracy. He deflects the incoming chain with a single swift punch. Taking the opening, Saba finally leaps from the shadows to attack. Saba is stunned by the casual defense, unable to process what just happened. At that moment, the small creature on his shoulder lets out a fierce roar. Recalling his weapon, he says, "It's fine, we can continue." Then he turns to his companion. "Punch, go help Otto." Now that they're alone, he thinks maybe it's time to test out that other skill. He clenches his fist, bracing for the real fight to begin. He slams his fist into the ground, unleashing a powerful shockwave of energy. As the power engulfs him, he prepares to activate his new skill. With a deafening shout, he activates Warrior's Roar. A system notification pops up. Party members' strength and stamina have increased. Just then, a scream echoes from deep within the forest, grabbing everyone's attention. Still fighting the wolf. Otto hears the roar and recognizes his boss's voice. Elsewhere, it seems Otto is now facing a mysterious new enemy of his own. He moves with newfound agility, dodging the enemy's assault and landing a counter. He realizes the fight has suddenly become much easier. He's shocked by his own surge in strength. "Were you hiding your true power?" she challenged. In a flash, she lunged her blade, a silver streak aimed right at him. With impossible agility, she dove beneath him, throwing him off balance. Landing on his back, she delivered a precise strike, completely immobilizing him. With cold steel pressed against his throat, she delivered her final verdict. But in that instant, a blur of motion appeared. Punch was charging in, ready to smash the enemy. In a flash, she created distance, falling back from her target. That's when Otto casually approached Punch, a confident smirk on his face, ready to join the fray. Watching from afar, she stared at the group frozen in a tense standoff in the middle of the woods. They're strong, she thought to herself. Just as Master said. Elsewhere, another battle was raging. He faced Saba, his chain scythe a blur of motion.
With a mighty roar, Saba hurled his weapon forward, but his opponent moved like the wind, weaving past the attack and parrying with his own blade.
Even while dodging, his eyes never stopped carefully analyzing his enemy's every move. Saba's chain lashed out like a striking serpent, sending phantom clones scattering into the air. After the assault, he paused, catching his breath from the intense clash. Across the clearing, they locked eyes, the calm before the next item. "Tell me," he began, "are you worried about your little apprentice in her fight?" Saba didn't answer. He just turned his head, watching from the side. "Attila overpowered Caspi," the warrior continued. "But in the end, he didn't kill her." An inferno of rage erupted from Saba. "I see through your despicable wolf's heart." The warrior simply stared back, a look of genuine confusion on his face. Saba glared as the warrior slowly closed the distance. "If I fail," he snarled, "Caspi will become the organization's next target." The man closed his eyes, processing this critical piece of the puzzle. A smirk touched his lips. He activated his mind's eye, his analytical ability flaring to life. Outraged, Saba roared, "I'll never forgive a beast who dares to target Caspi." A slow smile spread across his face. He finally understood everything. "Assassins," he mused, "don't usually fare well against warriors. Their way is to land a single decisive blow, then vanish to await another chance." But Saba had abandoned that doctrine, confronting him head-on. The narration concludes that his deep feelings for his disciple had ultimately driven him mad. He smiled, ready to exploit this glaring weakness in his enemy. As this battle escalated, Otto charged toward his own opponent. He couldn't help but think, I had no idea Saba was such a wild man. As he blocked the furious attack, he saw it an opening. With one swift motion, he grabbed Saba's hand and disarmed him. Immediately after, he launched him high into the air with immense force. "As long as I'm wary of his rage," he concluded, "I can win this easily." Crashing to the ground, Saba pulled himself together, preparing for his next assault. Leaping backward, he threw his chain to create some distance. But in an instant, his opponent appeared right behind him, catching him completely by surprise. Startled, Saba wondered, how did he get there so fast? A lightning-fast blow came his way, an attack Saba barely managed to dodge. Giving him no time to recover, he pressed forward relentlessly, closing the distance between them. "Damn it!" Saba grunted in frustration. Why is he always one step ahead? With a sharp kick, he struck Saba's weapon, sending it flying. A direct hit. Saba was thrown backward by the sheer force of the devastating impact. Just then, his axe began to resonate with the weapon's chain on the ground. Seeing the trap spring, Saba realized the truth. He'd read his every move. On the ground, he planted a hand to keep himself from collapsing completely. Lying on the forest floor, Saba decided it was time. He had to use his last resort.
With a look of grim determination, he announced,
"You've left me no other choice." Then with a furious scream, he charged the warrior with all his might.
Feeling the immense pressure, he recognized it with a slight smile. The assassin's ultimate technique. Closing the distance in a heartbeat, Saba delivered a direct strike to the warrior's chest. With a mighty roar, he unleashed the name of his annihilation art. Witnessing the attack, his opponent just offered a faint smirk, not flinching at all. After the impact, the forest fell deathly silent for a moment. Standing tall, Saba unleashed a torrent of energy from his clenched fist. Panting heavily, he wondered, Did I finally defeat him? But suddenly, his opponent appeared right behind him, completely unharmed. Stunned, Saba couldn't react, seeing his ultimate attack had failed. "Are you trying to throw your life away?" his opponent asked coldly. Terrified by the situation, Saba could only stare, cold sweat dripping down his face. Glancing at the forest, he prepared to leave the battlefield. With that, he and his opponent swiftly vanished from the area together. Hearing a noise, he thought, "Is someone there?" Standing up, he just grumbled and watched the forest with sharp eyes. Going back in time a few moments, Otto was fighting both Caspi and Punch. With a battle cry, Caspi charged forward, her daggers a blur of deadly strikes. Shouting back, Otto managed to defend against every single incoming attack. Seeing his incredible strength, Caspi wondered why things had to be this way. While fighting, Caspi heard a strange sound coming from the forest behind her. Seeing an opening, Otto yelled, "Now is my chance to attack!" Leaping towards her, he brought his sword down in a powerful, decisive blow. Irritated, she curses under her breath, parrying the sudden ambush. But in a flash, Saba materialized before her and took the full force of the blow. Bracing himself, Otto barely managed to block Saba's counterattack. Caspi watched, stunned by the sudden turn of events. Rushing to her master's side, she cried out his name, her voice laced with panic. Completely bewildered, she could only stare at him in shock. Saba called to her, preparing to give his last command. He told her that for a time she would have to travel with these strangers, left with no other option. Caspi reluctantly agreed. Saba watched his apprentice, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he turned and began to walk away into the darkness. With a final silent gesture, Saba bid his student farewell. As his form vanished into the shadows, his final words echoed, "Survive no matter what." Watching her master disappear, she could only call out his name in desperation. Suddenly, a single torch flared to life in the pitch-black forest. Soon after, a squad of knights arrived, their torches cutting through the gloom. Surveying the carnage, one of them turned. To his commander. The red-haired knight nodded gravely, confirming the report. Strewn across the ground were the bodies of several giant wolves. The leader surveyed the scene with a satisfied smirk. He then questioned if one man truly defeated them all. Annoyed, the other shot back, "How many times do I have to tell you?" The knight exploded, yelling that it was impossible. With a sly grin, the man replied that he didn't have to believe it, if he didn't want to. An electric tension filled the air as the two men stared each other down. From the distance, a voice cried out, calling for their master through the trees. Otto and Caspi emerged from the forest, rushing toward Attila. Seeing Otto with the girl, he demanded to know why they were together. From a distance, he watched them as they warily approached. Caspi snapped back, furious. "My name is Caspi, not that thing." A knight pointed his blade, demanding to know who they were and what group they belonged to. He came face to face with the red-haired knight, who challenged him directly. "And who are you?" Attila shot him a look of pure contempt. At this disrespect, the other knights erupted, shouting at him to know his place. Then recognition dawned. It was Arno, son of the Margrave. Stepping forward, Otto introduced himself as the Baron of Beltron. The knights whispered amongst themselves. Was this the famous war hero? One of them sneered that he looked more like a common bandit. Arno declared that if he was truly Otto, he would possess the official seal. He raised his sword, ready for a confrontation. He warned them that the punishment for impersonating a noble hero was severe. Just then, a knight came sprinting towards them, yelling, "Lord Arno!" He skidded to a halt, announcing he had an urgent report. Leaning in, he whispered into Arno's ear. The commander's face grew grim. Whatever he heard, it completely changed his demeanor to one of grave concern. With that, he announced that they were in an emergency situation. He turned to Otto, issuing a challenge. "If you're the real deal, then prove your strength." From a short distance, Otto and Caspi watched, their expressions hardening. Perched on his shoulder, the tiny creature glared at the knights with pure fury. The knight pointed his sword, calling him a murderer and daring him to fight.